The Segmentum Obscurus stands as the most foreboding and treacherous of the 5 great divisions that partition the Imperium of Man. Stretching across the galactic northwest from Terra's perspective, this vast region encompasses roughly 1/5 of the galaxy's habitable systems, yet its influence on Imperial affairs far exceeds its proportional size. The Segmentum's boundaries extend from the galactic core outward to the rim, bordered by Segmentum Solar to the galactic south and Segmentum Tempestus to the southeast, while its northern and western edges fade into the unexplored darkness beyond Imperial space. The Segmentum's eastern border runs along a rough line that passes through several key systems, including Bacca, the fortress world that serves as a crucial naval base for Battlefleet Gothic. From this eastern boundary, the region spreads westward across thousands of light years, encompassing the Gothic sector, Calixis sector, and numerous other Imperial domains before reaching into the uncharted territories beyond the galaxy's edge. The northern frontier stretches toward the galactic pole, where ancient star charts become increasingly unreliable and entire subsectors exist in effective isolation from Imperial authority. What truly defines the Segmentum Obscurus, however, is not its astronomical boundaries, but the malevolent presence that dominates its heart. The Eye of Terror, that vast rent in reality where the warp bleeds through into real space, serves as both the Segmentum's defining feature and its greatest curse. This massive warp storm, spanning roughly 10,000 light-years in diameter, sits like a festering wound in the northwestern reaches of the galaxy, its baleful influence radiating outward to corrupt and destabilize the surrounding regions. The Eye's gravitational effects on local space-time create navigation hazards that extend far beyond its visible boundaries. Imperial Navy vessels attempting to traverse the region must account for temporal distortions that can age a ship's crew by decades during what should be routine journeys, while other vessels emerge from warp translation to discover they have arrived years before they departed. These chronological anomalies make coordinated military operations extraordinarily difficult, as reinforcement fleets may arrive to find battles already concluded or conflicts that have not yet begun. Astropathic communication throughout the Segmentum Obscurus suffers constant interference from the Eye's psychic emanations. The telepathic messages that bind the Imperium together become garbled, delayed, or lost entirely when transmitted across regions close to the Great Warp Storm. Astropaths stationed on worlds within 1,000 light-years of the Eye report experiencing nightmarish visions during transmission attempts, with many suffering permanent psychological damage or death from exposure to the raw chaos energies that permeate local warp space. This communication breakdown creates administrative nightmares for Imperial governance, as orders from Terra may take months or years to reach their destinations, if they arrive at all. The Eye of Terror's influence extends beyond mere navigation and communication difficulties. The warp storm acts as a beacon for demonic incursions throughout the Segmentum, with worlds experiencing increased rates of possession, mutation, and heretical cults. Planets that have maintained Imperial compliance for millennia suddenly find themselves beset by chaos uprisings, their populations driven to madness by whispers from the Immaterium. The Adeptus Archives and local planetary defense forces struggle constantly against these manifestations, while the Inquisition maintains an unusually heavy presence throughout the region to combat the ever-present threat of chaos corruption. Beyond the Eye of Terror, numerous other warp anomalies plague the Segmentum Obscurus, creating a treacherous maze of hazards for Imperial forces. The Screaming Vortex, a smaller but no less dangerous warp storm located in the Calixis sector's outer reaches, spawns regular chaos raids against nearby Imperial worlds. This vortex differs from the Eye in its mobility, drifting slowly through local space and leaving trails of corrupted worlds in its wake. Imperial Navy patrols must constantly monitor its movements and evacuate populations from systems in its projected path. The Hadex anomaly presents another significant navigational challenge, manifesting as a region where the laws of physics operate according to alien principles. Ships entering this zone report instruments failing, gravity reversing without warning, and time flowing backward. The few vessels that have successfully traversed the anomaly describe encountering structures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously and energy patterns that defy all understanding. The Adeptus Mechanicus has established monitoring stations around the anomaly's perimeter, but their attempts to study the phenomenon have yielded little useful data. Warp storms of lesser magnitude but significant local impact dot the Segmentum star charts. The Fury, a violent tempest that periodically erupts near the Cadian Gate, can render entire subsectors inaccessible for months at a time. During these episodes, Imperial forces stationed in affected regions must operate without resupply or reinforcement, leading to numerous strategic disasters when enemy forces time their attacks to coincide with the storm's peak intensity. The Maelstrom's distant influence also reaches into the Segmentum's southern regions, creating unpredictable warp currents that have claimed countless Imperial vessels over the millennia. Gravitational anomalies caused by ancient stellar engineering projects add another layer of complexity to navigation within the Segmentum. The Nexus of Shadows, believed to be the remnant of a pre-age of technology stellar manipulation experiment, creates localized space-time distortions that can trap ships in temporal loops or fling them across vast distances without warning. Imperial Navy charts mark dozens of similar phenomena throughout the region, each requiring specific navigation protocols and specialized equipment to traverse safely. The cumulative effect of these hazards makes the Segmentum Obscurus the most dangerous region of Imperial space for routine operations. Merchant vessels avoid the area whenever possible, leading to chronic supply shortages on many worlds. Imperial Guard regiments deployed to the Segmentum often arrive months behind schedule, if at all, while their equipment and supplies may be scattered across multiple systems due to navigation errors. The Space Marines maintain a heavier presence in the region partly to compensate for these logistical challenges, as their self-sufficient chapter fleets can operate independently of the unreliable supply lines that hamper other Imperial forces. Governing this chaotic region falls to the Segmentum Command, headquartered at the massive fortress complex that serves as the Segmentum's administrative center. Unlike the other Segmentum fortresses, which function primarily as military installations and bureaucratic centers, the Segmentum Obscurus fortress operates under a state of permanent siege readiness. Its void shields remain active at all times, while its defense batteries maintain constant vigilance against the demon incursions and chaos raids that regularly threaten the facility. The fortress itself represents one of the Imperium's most impressive defensive installations, built into a massive asteroid that has been hollowed out and reinforced with layers of adamantine and ceramite armor. Multiple docking bays can accommodate entire battle fleets, while vast ammunition stores and repair facilities ensure that Imperial Navy vessels can be quickly resupplied and returned to active duty. The facility's command centers house banks of cogitators dedicated to tracking the countless variables that affect operations throughout the Segmentum, from warp storm movements to predicted demon incursion sites. Administrative challenges within the Segmentum Obscurus exceed those faced by any other Imperial region. The Segmentum Command must coordinate responses to threats that may not yet exist due to temporal anomalies, while simultaneously managing supply lines that shift unpredictably based on warp storm activity. Traditional Imperial bureaucracy, with its emphasis on standardized procedures and predictable timelines, proves inadequate for governing a region where cause and effect operate according to chaos logic. The Segmentum's governing council includes representatives from multiple Imperial organizations, each bringing their own priorities and methods to the complex task of regional administration. The Imperial Navy maintains the largest voice due to the critical importance of void superiority in such a hazardous region, while the Adeptus Mechanicus provides essential technical expertise for dealing with the various anomalies that plague local space. Inquisitorial representatives ensure that chaos corruption does not infiltrate the command structure itself, conducting regular purges of personnel who show signs of taint. Communication delays force the Segmentum Command to operate with unprecedented autonomy compared to other regional governments. Orders from the High Lords of Terra may be months out of date by the time they arrive, requiring local commanders to make decisions that would normally require approval from higher authorities. This independence creates tensions with Terra's central bureaucracy, which struggles to maintain oversight of a region that operates according to its own necessities rather than Imperium-wide policies. The fortress maintains extensive intelligence networks throughout the Segmentum, relying heavily on inquisitorial agents and Space Marine reconnaissance forces to provide timely information about emerging threats. These networks operate under constant pressure from Chaos infiltration attempts, requiring elaborate security protocols and regular personnel rotations to prevent corruption from taking root. The intelligence gathered often arrives fragmented and contradictory, forcing analysts to piece together threat assessments from incomplete data while accounting for the temporal distortions that may have affected the information's transmission. Resource allocation within the Segmentum Obscurus follows patterns unknown elsewhere in the Imperium. Entire battle fleets may be deployed to counter threats that exist only in probability matrices, while critical defensive positions sometimes go undefended due to communication failures or navigation hazards. The Segmentum Command has developed sophisticated predictive models that attempt to account for chaos-influenced variables, but these systems require constant recalibration as new anomalies emerge and existing threats evolve. Military doctrine throughout the region emphasizes flexibility and self-reliance over the rigid hierarchies preferred elsewhere in Imperial space. Imperial Guard regiments receive enhanced autonomy to adapt their tactics to local conditions, while Space Marine chapters coordinate directly with Segmentum authorities rather than working through the usual bureaucratic channels. This decentralized approach proves necessary given the communication difficulties and unpredictable nature of threats throughout the region, though it also creates opportunities for heretical elements to exploit gaps in Imperial oversight. The fortress worlds of the Iron Warriors represent some of the most formidable defensive installations within the Eye of Terror, their battlements and siegeworks standing as monuments to 10 millennia of bitter warfare and technological innovation. At the heart of this domain lies Medringard, the demon world that serves as Perdurabo's primary stronghold and the beating heart of Iron Warriors' operations throughout the galaxy. This world exemplifies the fusion of mortal engineering prowess with demonic corruption that defines the Fourth Legion's post-heresy evolution. Medringard's surface presents a hellscape of industrial fortification that stretches across continents in an unbroken maze of trenches, bunkers, and artillery positions. The world's original topography has been completely obliterated, replaced by geometric patterns of defensive works that follow mathematical principles derived from both human military engineering and the twisted geometries of chaos. Massive fortress complexes rise from the scarred terrain like iron mountains, their walls constructed from a fusion of traditional materials and demonically possessed metals that repair themselves when damaged and actively resist siege attempts. The demon engine foundries of Medringard operate continuously, their furnaces fed by the screams of captured Imperial soldiers and the raw stuff of chaos itself. These facilities produce the war machines that have become synonymous with Iron Warriors' tactics, defilers that combine the mobility of walkers with the firepower of battle tanks, forgefiends whose plasma cannons can breach fortress walls from extreme range, and maulerfiends that excel at close-quarters demolition work. The foundries themselves exist in a state of controlled demonic possession, with machine spirits bound to chaos entities that understand siege warfare at an instinctual level. Within these industrial complexes, warpsmiths oversee production lines that blend traditional manufacturing techniques with ritual summoning. Raw materials arrive through warp portals connected to mining operations on enslaved worlds throughout the Eye of Terror, while the binding of demons into mechanical forms requires precise timing coordinated with the ebb and flow of chaos energies. The resulting demon engines possess a malevolent intelligence that allows them to adapt their tactics during combat, learning from each engagement and sharing their experiences with other machines through demonic communion. The fortress cities of Medrengard serve as testing grounds for siege tactics that will later be employed against Imperial targets. Captured prisoners find themselves forced to defend mock fortifications, while Iron Warriors experiment with new assault techniques, their suffering providing both practical data and the psychic energy needed to power certain demon engines. These exercises often last for months, with defensive positions rebuilt repeatedly to test different approaches and weapon configurations. Perdurabo's personal citadel dominates the world's largest continent, its spires reaching into the perpetually storm-racked sky. The structure defies conventional architectural principles, with passages that lead to chambers larger than the buildings that contain them and walls that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Within this impossible fortress, the Demon Primarch conducts his endless calculations, plotting siege campaigns that span centuries and coordinating the activities of Iron Warriors' warbands scattered across the galaxy. The Tyrik-Kage incident continues to cast its shadow over Iron Warriors' operations more than 10,000 years after the event. This carefully orchestrated trap, which lured the Imperial Fists and their successor chapters into a killing ground of unprecedented scale, demonstrated Perdurabo's tactical genius while simultaneously revealing the depths of his obsession with his former brother Rogel Dorn. The fortress complex constructed for this engagement became a template for Iron Warriors' defensive installations throughout the galaxy, its interlocking fields of fire and redundant defensive systems copied on countless worlds. The psychological impact of the Tyrik-Kage extends beyond mere tactical considerations. Iron Warriors who participated in the engagement carry the memory of that perfect siege as a defining moment in their legion's history, while younger recruits study detailed recordings of the battle as part of their indoctrination. The sight of Imperial Fists and their successors trapped within the maze of trenches and bunkers, slowly ground down by precisely coordinated artillery barrages and demon engine assaults, serves as proof of the Iron Warriors' superiority in siege warfare. This obsession with the Imperial Fists has shaped Iron Warriors' strategic priorities throughout the millennia since the heresy. Warbands specifically seek out engagements with Dorn's sons and their successor chapters, often abandoning more strategically valuable targets when the opportunity arises to face their ancient enemies. Intelligence networks maintained by the Iron Warriors track Imperial Fists' movements across the galaxy, while specialized assault formations trained specifically to counter the defensive tactics favored by the yellow-armored Space Marines. The rivalry manifests in the construction methods employed by both sides when establishing fortifications. Iron Warriors' defensive positions incorporate specific design elements intended to counter Imperial Fists' assault doctrines, while the Sons of Dorn have developed siege techniques that specifically target the mathematical precision that characterizes Iron Warriors' fortifications. This ongoing tactical evolution has produced increasingly sophisticated defensive and offensive systems as each side attempts to gain an advantage over their ancient enemies. Perdurabo's ascension to Demon Primarch status fundamentally altered the nature of Iron Warriors' operations throughout the Segmentum Obscurus and beyond. The transformation occurred gradually over several millennia, as the Primarch's obsession with perfection and his growing connection to chaos energies slowly reshaped his physical form and expanded his consciousness. Unlike some of his brother Primarchs who embraced demonhood as a source of raw power, Perdurabo's transformation enhanced his already formidable intellect and strategic capabilities. The Demon Primarch's influence extends through a network of possessed machinery and demon engines that serve as extensions of his will. Iron Warriors commanders operating thousands of light years from Medrengard report, receiving tactical insights and strategic guidance through communion with their demon engines, suggesting that Perdurabo's consciousness can manifest wherever his legion's machines operate. This connection allows for unprecedented coordination between widely scattered Iron Warriors forces, enabling complex multi-theater campaigns that would be impossible for other Chaos factions to execute. Siege tactics employed by Chaos forces throughout the Segmentum Obscurus increasingly reflect Perdurabo's mathematical approach to warfare. Even warbands not directly affiliated with the Iron Warriors have adopted techniques pioneered on Medrengard, creating standardized approaches to fortress assault that maximize efficiency while minimizing casualties among attacking forces. These methods emphasize the systematic reduction of defensive positions through precisely coordinated artillery bombardments and demon engine assaults, avoiding the costly frontal assaults favored by other Chaos factions. The Demon Primarch's strategic philosophy has influenced Chaos naval tactics as well, with siege fleets adopting formation patterns and targeting priorities derived from Perdurabo's calculations. Orbital bombardments follow mathematical formulas designed to create specific patterns of destruction that facilitate ground assaults, while boarding actions against Imperial vessels employ techniques developed for breaching fortress walls. This systematic approach to void warfare has proven particularly effective against Imperial Navy vessels, whose crews often struggle to adapt to the methodical precision of Iron Warriors' assault tactics. Beyond the Eye of Terror, numerous Iron Warriors warbands maintain fortress worlds that serve as forward operating bases for raids into Imperial space. These installations follow design principles established on Medrengard, but adapt to local conditions and available resources. The warband of the Broken Chain operates from a fortress asteroid in the Ghoul Stars, its mobile stronghold capable of moving between systems while maintaining full defensive capabilities. Their base incorporates captured Imperial technology with demon-possessed systems, creating hybrid defensive networks that confuse Imperial assault forces accustomed to facing either purely technological or purely demonic threats. The Steel Brethren maintain multiple fortress installations throughout the Calixis sector's outer reaches, each one serving as a staging area for raids against nearby Imperial worlds. These fortifications demonstrate the Iron Warriors' ability to construct formidable defensive positions using locally available materials, with some installations carved directly into planetary bedrock, while others rise from the surfaces of dead worlds as towering spires of corrupted metal. The Steel Brethren's engineers have developed techniques for rapidly constructing defensive positions using enslaved populations, creating fortress cities that can be completed within months rather than the years typically required for such projects. In the Gothic sector, the Iron Skull's warband operates from a series of interconnected asteroid fortresses that form a mobile defensive network. These installations can combine their firepower to create devastating bombardment capabilities while maintaining the flexibility to separate and engage multiple targets simultaneously. The Iron Skulls have perfected the art of asteroid fortification, hollowing out space rocks and installing defensive systems that turn each asteroid into a formidable weapons platform capable of threatening entire Imperial fleets. The impact of these fortress worlds on Imperial defense strategies cannot be overstated. The presence of Iron Warrior strongholds forces Imperial commanders to maintain larger garrison forces on nearby worlds, as traditional defensive measures prove inadequate against the systematic siege techniques employed by Perdurabo's sons. Fortress worlds that might normally require only minimal defenses must be heavily fortified and constantly supplied with ammunition and spare parts to withstand prolonged siege operations. Imperial Navy patrol routes throughout the Segmentum Obscurus have been redesigned to account for the threat posed by Iron Warriors' fortress worlds, with battle groups required to maintain sufficient strength to engage these installations if necessary. The mobile nature of some Iron Warriors' bases complicates these defensive arrangements, as Imperial forces must track moving threats while maintaining coverage of static defensive positions. Intelligence gathering operations focus heavily on identifying new Iron Warriors construction projects, as early detection of fortress building activities can allow Imperial forces to disrupt these efforts before defensive positions become too strong to assault. The psychological impact of Iron Warriors' fortress worlds extends throughout Imperial military doctrine in the region. Officers receive specialized training in siege warfare techniques, while engineering corps study Iron Warriors' fortification methods to develop countermeasures. The knowledge that any engagement with Iron Warriors' forces may involve prolonged siege operations influences equipment procurement and unit organization, with Imperial forces maintaining larger stocks of siege equipment and specialized assault troops than would be necessary in other regions of the galaxy. Recruitment and training programs throughout the Segmentum Obscurus emphasize siege warfare skills to a degree unknown elsewhere in Imperial space. Imperial Guard regiments raised in the region receive extensive training in trench warfare, urban combat, and fortress assault techniques, while local planetary defense forces maintain siege equipment that would normally be found only in specialized Imperial Guard units. This emphasis on siege capabilities reflects the reality that any major conflict in the region will likely involve attempts to reduce Iron Warriors' fortifications or defend Imperial positions against systematic siege operations. The transformation of Angron from a broken Primarch into the demon prince known as the Red Angel stands as one of the most violent and horrific ascensions in the annals of chaos history. Unlike his brother Perturabo's calculated embrace of demonhood, Angron's metamorphosis occurred through pure, unrestrained carnage during the First War for Armageddon. The psychic shockwave of his ascension rippled through the warp, marking the birth of Khorne's most favored champion and heralding an era of unprecedented bloodshed throughout the Segmentum Obscurus. The demon world that serves as Angron's primary stronghold exists in a state of perpetual warfare, its very landscape shaped by the endless conflicts that rage across its blood-soaked surface. This world, whose true name has been lost to the screaming winds that howl through its valleys, presents a hellscape of bone-strewn battlefields and rivers that run red with the blood of countless combatants. The sky burns with an eternal crimson twilight, while the air itself carries the metallic taste of spilled blood and the acrid smoke of burning flesh. Massive gladiatorial arenas dominate the world's geography, their structures built from the bones of fallen warriors and mortared with crystallized blood. These amphitheaters can accommodate hundreds of thousands of spectators, though the audiences consist primarily of howling demons and the tortured souls of those who have displeased the blood god. The largest of these arenas stretches across an entire continent, its fighting pits connected by a labyrinthine network of tunnels and chambers where captives await their turn to die for the entertainment of Khorne's servants. Within these arenas, captured Imperial soldiers, rival Chaos cultists, and even World Eaters who have fallen from favor face each other in combat that continues until only one participant remains alive. The survivors of these contests earn temporary reprieve from death, though victory merely guarantees participation in increasingly deadly competitions. The arenas serve multiple purposes beyond mere entertainment, functioning as training grounds where World Eaters perfect their combat techniques and proving grounds where new recruits demonstrate their worthiness to join the Legion's ranks. The ritual sites scattered across the demon world's surface facilitate the dark ceremonies that bind the World Eaters ever closer to their patron deity. These locations feature massive altars carved from single blocks of obsidian, their surfaces permanently stained with the blood of millions of sacrifices. Brass braziers burn with flames that never consume their fuel, casting dancing shadows that seem to move independently of their sources. The largest ritual site occupies the summit of a mountain that has been carved into the shape of Khorne's skull symbol, its eye sockets serving as vast chambers where the most important ceremonies take place. During these rituals, World Eaters' chaplains lead their brothers in frenzied worship that can last for days without pause. The ceremonies involve the systematic torture and execution of prisoners, with each death adding to the psychic resonance that strengthens the Legion's connection to Khorne. The blood spilled during these events flows through carved channels in the altar stones, collecting in pools that never overflow despite the constant additions. These blood pools serve as focal points for demonic summoning, allowing lesser demons of Khorne to manifest in the material realm. The fortress monasteries that house World Eaters' warbands throughout the demon world reflect their occupants' obsession with violence and death. These structures lack the geometric precision of Iron Warriors' fortifications or the Baroque excess of Emperor's Children palaces. instead presenting crude but effective defensive positions designed primarily to channel attackers into killing zones. The walls bear the marks of countless battles, their surfaces scarred by weapon impacts and stained with the blood of those who have died defending or assaulting these positions. Training facilities within these fortress monasteries focus exclusively on close-quarters combat, with practice chambers designed to simulate the cramped conditions of starship corridors and urban environments. World Eater's neophytes spend years mastering the use of chain axes and other melee weapons, their training regimens involving actual combat against captured enemies rather than simulated exercises. The mortality rate among recruits remains extremely high, but those who survive emerge as some of the most deadly close combat specialists in the galaxy. The Red Crusades represent Angron's most ambitious attempts to spread Khorne's influence throughout Imperial space, with massive fleets of World Eaters vessels emerging from the Eye of Terror to bring slaughter to entire sectors. These campaigns differ from typical Chaos raids in their scale and systematic nature, involving coordinated assaults on multiple worlds simultaneously. The First Red Crusade devastated the Armageddon sector, leaving several worlds completely depopulated and others transformed into demon worlds where reality itself has been corrupted by the massive bloodshed that occurred there. During the Dominion of Fire campaign, World Eaters forces under Angron's direct command systematically attacked Forge worlds throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, seeking to capture the advanced weaponry and demon engine construction facilities operated by the Adeptus Mechanicus. The campaign demonstrated the tactical evolution of the World Eaters since their fall to chaos, with their traditional berserker charges supplemented by coordinated orbital bombardments and strategic targeting of enemy command structures. The capture of Lucius Prime provided the Legion with manufacturing capabilities that significantly enhanced their ability to maintain their war machines and weapons. The Genna massacre stands as one of the most horrific examples of World Eaters' methodology during their incursions into Imperial space. The Hive world of Genna supported a population of over 50 billion citizens when World Eaters' forces arrived in the system, their fleet emerging from warp translation in perfect attack formation. Rather than attempting to capture the world's industrial facilities or strategic resources, the World Eaters focused exclusively on maximizing casualties among the civilian population. The assault on Genna began with orbital bombardments that targeted refugee centers and evacuation sites, forcing the population to remain in the Hive cities where they could be more efficiently slaughtered. World Eaters' forces then landed at multiple points around each hive, using their knowledge of urban warfare to systematically clear each level from bottom to top. The campaign lasted for 3 months, during which the World Eaters maintained a precise count of their kills, competing among themselves to achieve the highest body counts. The psychological impact of the Genna massacre extended far beyond the immediate casualties, as Vox transmissions from the dying world broadcast the sounds of slaughter throughout the sector. Imperial worlds within 100 light-years of Genna experienced massive population uprisings as citizens attempted to flee their homes, while planetary defense forces struggled to maintain order in the face of widespread panic. The Adeptus Archives reported a significant increase in chaos cult activity throughout the region, as some citizens turned to Khorne worship in the hope of surviving similar attacks. Imperial Navy forces responding to the crisis at Genna arrived to find the world's surface covered in a layer of ash mixed with human bone fragments, while the Hive cities had been transformed into vast charnel houses. The World Eaters had departed the system by the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, leaving behind only their signature calling card, pyramids of skulls arranged in patterns that formed Khorne's symbol when viewed from orbit. The cleanup operation required the deployment of entire Imperial Guard regiments equipped with specialized equipment for handling biological contamination. The influence of Khorne's domain within the Eye of Terror manifests throughout the Segmentum Obscurus in ways that extend far beyond direct World Eaters operations. The constant warfare that characterizes the region feeds the Blood God's power, creating a feedback loop where increased violence leads to stronger demonic manifestations, which in turn provoke more conflicts. Imperial commanders report that battlefields throughout the Segmentum experience significantly higher rates of berserker episodes among their troops, with normally disciplined soldiers suddenly abandoning their positions to engage in frenzied melee combat. Warp storms throughout the region increasingly carry the taint of Khorne's influence, with their psychic emanations driving populations toward violence and bloodshed. The Crimson Tide, a recurring warp phenomenon that appears near the Cadian Gate every few centuries, transforms entire populations into frenzied killers who turn on each other in orgies of violence that continue until no one remains alive. These events typically last for several days before the affected populations collapse from exhaustion, leaving behind scenes of devastation that require extensive inquisitorial investigation. The manifestation of Khornate influence in the material realm often begins with subtle changes in local wildlife, as predatory species become increasingly aggressive and develop enhanced physical capabilities. Reports from frontier worlds describe packs of feral dogs growing to the size of horses while developing armored hide and metallic teeth, while avian species begin attacking in coordinated formations that suggest unnatural intelligence. These corrupted creatures serve as harbingers of more serious demonic incursions, their presence indicating areas where the barrier between real space and the warp has become dangerously thin. Planetary governors throughout the Segmentum Obscurus maintain specialized response teams trained to identify and contain early signs of Khornate corruption, though their success rates remain discouragingly low. The violent nature of Khorne's influence makes it particularly difficult to detect before it reaches critical mass, as the early stages often resemble normal criminal activity or civil unrest. By the time authorities recognize the supernatural nature of increasing violence levels, entire cities may already be in the grip of blood-mad riots that can only be stopped through massive military intervention. The Brazen Skulls Warband operates throughout the Gothic sector, establishing hidden bases on worlds where they recruit from local criminal populations and conduct raids against Imperial shipping. Their recruitment methods involve organizing gladiatorial contests in underhive areas, with winners earning the chance to join the warband, while losers provide blood sacrifices to Khorne. These tournaments can continue for months, drawing participants from across entire planets and creating underground networks of Khornate cultists who support World Eater's operations. The Skulltakers maintain a mobile fleet that strikes at Imperial convoys throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, their attacks characterized by the complete annihilation of crews and passengers rather than attempts to capture cargo or vessels. Their ships bear the scars of countless battles, with hull plating replaced by brass sheets inscribed with Khornate symbols and weapon systems modified to maximize casualties rather than tactical effectiveness. The Warband's flagship, a corrupted battle barge known as the Crimson Harvest, serves as a mobile arena where captured Imperial officers are forced to fight to the death for the entertainment of the crew. In the Calixis sector, the Blood Pact represents one of the most successful Khornate cults operating in Imperial space, having evolved from a single planetary uprising into a multi-system organization that threatens entire subsectors. The cult's military forces employ equipment and tactics derived from World Eater's training, though their human followers lack the enhanced physiology and experience of true Astartes warriors. Blood Pact forces specialize in urban warfare and population control, using terror tactics to demoralize Imperial defenders while maximizing civilian casualties. The cult's organizational structure reflects Khornate principles, with leadership positions determined through ritual combat rather than administrative competence. This system ensures that Blood Pact commanders possess exceptional combat skills, though it also creates instability as frequent leadership changes disrupt long-term planning. The cult compensates for this weakness by maintaining multiple independent cells that can operate without central coordination, allowing their activities to continue even when senior leaders are killed or captured. Imperial attempts to contain Khornate influence throughout the Segmentum Obscurus face unique challenges, due to the violent nature of the corruption involved. Traditional counterinsurgency tactics often prove counterproductive, as military operations against Khornate cults tend to escalate violence levels in ways that strengthen the very forces they are meant to suppress. The Ordo Malleus has developed specialized protocols for dealing with Khornate manifestations, emphasizing rapid response and overwhelming force to prevent cult activities from reaching the critical mass needed to summon greater demons. Inquisitorial strike teams operating throughout the region carry specialized equipment designed to counter Khornate corruption, including psychic dampening fields that can disrupt the blood rage effects that characterize followers of the blood god. These teams typically include Culexus assassins, whose null psychic abilities prove particularly effective against demon-possessed cultists, while Aversir assassins provide the close combat capabilities needed to engage berserker opponents on equal terms. The Adeptus Archives maintains several orders militant with specialized training in combating Khornate cults, their faith-based resistance to chaos corruption making them ideal candidates for operations in heavily tainted areas. These battle sisters employ flame weapons and blessed ammunition that proves particularly effective against demon-possessed opponents, while their training emphasizes disciplined fire control to avoid the berserker charges that characterize Khornate combat doctrine. The pestilent domains of the Death Guard within the Eye of Terror represent corruption made manifest, where the very concept of decay has transcended natural law to become a creative force that births new forms of existence from putrefaction and disease. At the center of this realm of endless rot stands the Plague Planet, Mortarian's primary stronghold, and the beating heart of Nurgle's influence throughout the galaxy. This demon world exists in a state of perpetual decomposition and regeneration, its surface covered in vast gardens where diseases cultivate themselves and plagues evolve into increasingly virulent strains. The Plague Planet's atmosphere consists of a thick miasma of toxic gases that would prove instantly fatal to unprotected human life, yet within this poisonous environment thrives an ecosystem of unprecedented complexity and malevolence. Massive fungal forests stretch across entire continents, their towering spores releasing clouds of infectious material that drift on the fetid winds to seed new growths in distant regions. These fungal structures serve multiple purposes within Mortarian's domain, functioning simultaneously as manufacturing centers for biological weapons, research facilities for disease cultivation, and living repositories of plague knowledge accumulated over 10 millennia of warfare. The trees themselves pulse with unnatural life, their bark weeping infectious fluids that collect in pools at their bases. These accumulations of concentrated disease matter provide raw materials for the Death Guard's biological warfare programs, with different species of fungi producing toxins specifically tailored to overcome particular types of immune systems. Imperial human physiology, space marine gene seed modifications, and even the enhanced constitutions of other Chaos Space Marines all require different approaches, and the Plague Planet's ecosystem has evolved to provide solutions for each challenge. Beneath the fungal canopy, vast networks of root systems connect individual trees into a single, planet-spanning organism that serves as both communication network and manufacturing infrastructure. Information about successful plague strains spreads through these connections at the speed of thought, allowing rapid adaptation and improvement of biological weapons based on battlefield reports from Death Guard forces operating throughout the galaxy. The root networks also transport raw materials and finished plague products across vast distances, enabling centralized production and distribution of the most effective disease agents. The cultivation facilities scattered throughout the Plague Planet's fungal forests represent some of the most sophisticated biological warfare installations in existence, their operations guided by the accumulated knowledge of Mortarian's plague marines and the twisted inspiration of Nurgle's demonic servants. These laboratories exist in various stages of decay and regeneration, their structures built from living materials that adapt to changing research requirements while maintaining the sterile conditions necessary for precise plague development work. Within these facilities, captured subjects from across the galaxy serve as test subjects for experimental disease strains, their suffering providing both practical data about plague effectiveness and the psychic energy that fuels Nurgle's power. Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marine prisoners, alien specimens, and even volunteers from chaos cults all contribute to the research programs that have produced some of the most devastating biological weapons ever deployed against Imperial forces. The testing procedures follow methodical protocols developed over millennia of experience, with careful documentation of symptoms, transmission rates, and mortality statistics. The most advanced cultivation centers focus on developing plague strains that can overcome the enhanced immune systems of Space Marines, a challenge that has occupied Death Guard researchers since the Horus Heresy. These facilities maintain samples of gene seed material from every known Loyalist chapter, allowing for the development of targeted biological weapons that exploit specific genetic vulnerabilities. The success of these programs has produced plague variants capable of corrupting even the most heavily augmented Astartes warriors, transforming them into willing servants of Nurgle through gradual biological and psychological corruption. Demon engines unique to the Death Guard operate throughout the Plague planet's industrial complexes, their mechanical components fused with biological systems that enhance their capabilities while making them nearly impossible to destroy through conventional means. Plagueburst crawlers serve as mobile manufacturing platforms, their internal systems continuously producing plague grenades and biological ammunition, while their defensive weapons protect the cultivation facilities from potential threats. These vehicles demonstrate the Death Guard's mastery of biomechanical integration, with living components that can regenerate damage and adapt to changing battlefield conditions. The Myphitic Blight haulers that patrol the Plague planet's perimeter combine the mobility of fast attack vehicles with the durability that comes from Nurgle's blessings, their crews protected by sealed environmental systems that allow them to operate in even the most toxic environments. These machines serve multiple roles within Mortarian's domain, functioning as reconnaissance platforms, mobile laboratories, and rapid response units capable of containing outbreaks of particularly dangerous experimental plague strains that might threaten the planet's carefully balanced ecosystem. Mortarian's transformation into a demon Primarch occurred through a gradual process of corruption that began during the Horus Heresy and continued for several millennia afterward, his body and soul slowly adapting to the toxic environment he had chosen to inhabit. Unlike the violent ascensions experienced by some of his brother Primarchs, Mortarian's metamorphosis reflected Nurgle's patient nature, with each stage of corruption bringing new capabilities while maintaining the tactical intelligence that had made him such an effective military commander during the Great Crusade. The Demon Primarch's physical form reflects his complete integration with Nurgle's domain, his ancient power armor fused with his flesh and continuously weeping toxic fluids that corrode everything they touch. His wings, once mechanical constructs designed for atmospheric flight, have become living appendages capable of generating localized plague storms that can devastate entire battlefields. The scythe he carries serves as both weapon and ritual focus, its blade forged from materials that exist only within Nurgle's realm, and inscribed with formulae that describe the mathematical relationships governing disease transmission and mutation. Mortarian's strategic approach to spreading Nurgle's gifts throughout the galaxy reflects his background as a military commander, combined with his newfound understanding of biological warfare principles. Rather than relying solely on direct assault, the Death Guard under his leadership employs sophisticated multi-stage campaigns that begin with the introduction of subtle plague agents into target populations months or years before any military action occurs. These advanced preparations weaken enemy forces while creating conditions that favor Death Guard tactical doctrines during subsequent invasions. The Primarch's ability to manifest across multiple battlefields simultaneously through demonic projection allows for unprecedented coordination of Death Guard operations throughout the Segmentum Obscurus and beyond. His consciousness can inhabit specially prepared plague cauldrons maintained by Death Guard sorcerers, enabling direct communication with field commanders and real-time tactical guidance during critical engagements. This capability has proven particularly valuable during complex campaigns involving multiple warbands operating across vast distances, as traditional astropathic communication proves unreliable in regions heavily contaminated with Nurgle's influence. The Plague Wars that ravaged Ultramar demonstrated the evolution of Death Guard's strategic doctrine under Mortarian's leadership, with coordinated biological warfare campaigns that preceded conventional military operations by decades. The initial phases involved the systematic introduction of dormant plague agents into Ultramar's water supplies and agricultural systems, creating widespread but seemingly unrelated health problems that strained medical resources and reduced overall population fitness. These preparatory operations required extensive intelligence networks and careful timing to avoid detection by Imperial authorities. When conventional military operations finally began, Death Guard forces found their enemies already weakened by years of subtle biological warfare, while the accumulated toxins in local ecosystems provided environmental advantages that favored Nurgle's servants. The campaign's success validated Mortarian's patient approach to warfare, demonstrating that biological weapons could achieve strategic objectives that would require massive conventional forces to accomplish through direct assault. The Death Guard's relationship with other Nurgle-aligned factions throughout the Segmentum Obscurus reflects the hierarchical nature of chaos worship, with Mortarian's legion serving as the primary military force, while various cult organizations provide intelligence, logistics, and recruitment support. The Purge Warband operates throughout the Gothic sector, their activities focused on eliminating Imperial infrastructure and personnel through systematic poisoning campaigns that prepare target worlds for eventual Death Guard occupation. These allied warbands employ tactics derived from Death Guard doctrine, but adapted to their more limited resources and capabilities, emphasizing stealth and patience over the direct confrontation favored by full Astartes forces. The Purge specializes in infiltrating Imperial installations and introducing plague agents into closed environmental systems, their operations often remaining undetected for months while diseases spread through target populations. Their success rate in preparing worlds for Death Guard conquest has earned them significant autonomy within Mortarian's overall strategic framework. Plague Marine formations throughout the region maintain close coordination with local demon populations, their operations enhanced by the presence of Nurglings that serve as scouts and saboteurs during preliminary phases of planetary invasions. These lesser demons prove particularly effective at infiltrating Imperial defensive positions, their small size and apparent harmlessness allowing them to penetrate security measures that would stop larger threats. Once inside enemy installations, Nurglings can contaminate food supplies, sabotage equipment, and create conditions that favor the introduction of more serious plague agents. The Great Unclean Ones that serve as Mortarian's primary lieutenants bring their own tactical specialties to Death Guard operations, their mastery of biological warfare complementing the strategic planning capabilities of the Demon Primarch. These greater demons typically focus on developing new plague strains and coordinating the activities of lesser demon populations, while leaving conventional military operations to the Plague Marines, who retain the tactical knowledge acquired during their service in the pre-heresy Death Guard. Demon engines specific to Nurgle's domain play crucial roles in Death Guard military operations, their biological components providing capabilities that purely mechanical systems cannot match. Plagueburst crawlers serve as mobile plague laboratories during extended campaigns, their internal systems continuously producing specialized biological weapons tailored to local conditions and enemy vulnerabilities. The living components of these machines can analyze environmental samples and adjust their output accordingly, ensuring that Death Guard forces always have access to the most effective plague agents for current tactical situations. The Fetid Bloat drones that accompany Death Guard formations provide both reconnaissance and direct fire support, their flight capabilities enhanced by the demonic entities bound within their mechanical frames. These machines excel at operating in contaminated environments where conventional aircraft would suffer rapid system failures, their biological components actually thriving in the toxic atmospheres that characterize Death Guard operational areas. The drone's weapon systems fire ammunition infused with concentrated plague essences, ensuring that even minor wounds inflicted by their attacks can lead to systemic infections that incapacitate enemy forces. Major plague outbreaks attributed to Death Guard activities have devastated Imperial worlds throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, with some infections proving so virulent that entire planetary populations have been lost despite extensive medical intervention. The Morty's plague that swept through the Calixis sector during the late 41st millennium demonstrated the sophisticated nature of modern Death Guard biological warfare, with multiple disease agents working in concert to overwhelm Imperial medical capabilities, while creating conditions that favored chaos cult recruitment. The initial phase of the Morty's plague appeared to be a relatively minor respiratory infection that spread rapidly through urban populations, but caused only mild symptoms in most victims. Imperial medical authorities initially dismissed the outbreak as a seasonal illness requiring only routine public health measures, allowing the disease to establish itself throughout multiple planetary populations before its true nature became apparent. The plague's second phase activated several months after initial infection, triggering massive organ failure and neurological damage that killed billions of Imperial citizens within weeks. The third and final phase of the Morty's plague affected survivors of the initial die-off, inducing psychological changes that made victims susceptible to chaos corruption while enhancing their physical resilience to environmental toxins. These transformed populations proved ideal recruits for Nurgle cults, their enhanced constitutions allowing them to operate in contaminated environments, while their psychological conditioning made them willing servants of the Death Guard forces that eventually occupied their worlds. The zombie plague that emerged in the Gothic sector represented a different approach to biological warfare, with infected victims retaining basic motor functions while losing higher cognitive abilities and developing an insatiable hunger for living flesh. This plague strain proved particularly effective at disrupting Imperial defensive preparations, as infected populations turned on their neighbors and destroyed critical infrastructure during the chaotic period before Death Guard forces arrived to establish control. The psychological impact of these plague outbreaks extends far beyond their immediate casualties, creating widespread panic throughout Imperial populations and straining medical resources across entire sectors. Planetary governments implement increasingly draconian quarantine measures that often prove counterproductive, as desperate populations attempt to flee contaminated areas and inadvertently spread infections to previously unaffected regions. The breakdown of civil order that typically accompanies major plague outbreaks creates opportunities for chaos cults to expand their influence and recruit new members from populations that have lost faith in Imperial protection. Imperial medical authorities throughout the Segmentum Obscurus maintain specialized research facilities dedicated to analyzing Death Guard biological weapons and developing countermeasures, though their success rates remain disappointingly low. The adaptive nature of many plague strains makes traditional vaccine development extremely difficult, as successful treatments often become obsolete within months as diseases evolve to overcome new defensive measures. The most effective countermeasures typically involve complete environmental sterilization using virus bombs or orbital bombardment, solutions that require the sacrifice of entire planetary populations to prevent wider contamination. The Adeptus Mechanicus has developed specialized equipment for operating in plague-contaminated environments, including sealed power armor systems and atmospheric processors capable of creating sterile zones within infected areas. These technologies prove essential for Imperial forces attempting to combat Death Guard operations, though their effectiveness remains limited by the adaptive capabilities of advanced plague strains that can corrode protective equipment or infiltrate sealed systems through microscopic breaches. Inquisitorial protocols for dealing with suspected Death Guard biological warfare emphasize rapid response and overwhelming force, as delayed reactions typically allow plague agents to establish themselves beyond the point where containment remains possible. Ordo Malleus strike teams carry specialized equipment, including phosphex weapons and viral ammunition designed to sterilize contaminated areas, while their personnel receive extensive medical augmentation to enhance resistance to biological weapons. Despite these preparations, casualty rates among inquisitorial forces operating against Death Guard targets remain extremely high, reflecting the sophisticated nature of the biological threats they face. The fortress worlds of the Segmentum Obscurus represent humanity's most ambitious attempt to create impregnable bulwarks against the chaotic forces that pour forth from the Eye of Terror. These heavily fortified planets serve as the backbone of Imperial defense throughout the region, their massive fortifications and elite garrison forces standing as the last line of protection for billions of Imperial citizens. The construction and maintenance of these fortress worlds requires enormous resources and represents one of the Imperium's most significant military investments, yet their strategic value in containing chaos incursions makes them indispensable components of regional defense planning. Cadia stood as the most critical fortress world in the Segmentum Obscurus, its position at the mouth of the Cadian Gate making it the primary choke point through which chaos forces could launch major invasions into Imperial space. The planet's surface bore the scars of 10 millennia of warfare, with every square kilometer transformed into interlocking defensive positions that channeled enemy forces into carefully prepared killing zones. Massive fortress complexes stretched across entire continents, their walls reaching heights that dwarfed the greatest hive cities, while their underground bunker networks extended deep into the planetary crust. The Cassar fortresses that dominated Cadian geography represented the pinnacle of Imperial defensive engineering, each one capable of withstanding orbital bombardment while housing entire armies within their armored walls. Cassar Dearth, the largest of these installations, covered an area equivalent to a major hive city and contained manufacturing facilities capable of producing everything from lasguns to battle tanks. The fortress's walls rose over a kilometer into the atmosphere, their surfaces studded with weapon emplacements that provided overlapping fields of fire across the surrounding terrain. Within Cassar Dearth's armored halls, vast barracks complexes housed millions of Cadian shock troops, their training facilities operating continuously to maintain the planet's legendary military readiness. The fortress contained its own water purification systems, hydroponic farms, and atmospheric processors, allowing it to operate independently during extended sieges. Emergency protocols called for the fortress to maintain full operational capability for up to 50 years without external resupply, a requirement that necessitated enormous storage facilities and redundant life support systems. The Cadian shock troops earned their reputation as the finest conventional soldiers in the Imperial Guard through a training regimen that began in childhood and continued throughout their military careers. Every Cadian citizen received basic military instruction from the age of 10, learning marksmanship, fieldcraft, and small unit tactics as part of their standard education. Those who demonstrated exceptional aptitude advanced to specialized military academies, where they studied advanced warfare techniques and leadership principles under the guidance of veteran officers who had survived decades of combat against chaos forces. Cadian military doctrine emphasized disciplined firepower and tactical flexibility, with shock trooper regiments trained to operate effectively in environments ranging from urban warfare to open battlefield engagements. Their standard equipment included high-quality lasguns manufactured in Cadian forge complexes, flak armor reinforced with ceramite plates, and specialized gear designed for fighting chaos-corrupted enemies. Cadian officers carried power weapons and digital weapons as symbols of their rank, while their tactical training included extensive study of chaos tactics and corruption identification protocols. The planet's strategic importance extended beyond its role as a military stronghold, as Cadia served as the primary staging area for Imperial offensives into the Eye of Terror and the coordination center for defense operations throughout the region. The Cadian High Command maintained detailed intelligence files on every known Chaos warband operating in the area, while their strategic planning departments continuously updated invasion scenarios and response protocols based on the latest threat assessments. Cadian regiments deployed throughout the galaxy carried with them the tactical expertise developed through constant warfare against Chaos forces, their experience making them invaluable assets for Imperial commanders facing similar threats. The 8th Cadian Shock Troops distinguished themselves during the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, their knowledge of Chaos tactics proving crucial in several key engagements against heretical forces. Similarly, Cadian advisors attached to other Imperial Guard regiments provided specialized training in anti-Chaos warfare techniques that significantly improved unit effectiveness against corrupted enemies. The mysterious Cadian pylons scattered across the planet's surface represented technology that predated human settlement by millions of years, their alien construction and unknown purpose making them subjects of intense study by the Adeptus Mechanicus. These towering structures, composed of a black stone material that resisted all attempts at analysis, generated energy fields that stabilized local warp space and prevented large-scale demonic manifestations. The pylon's influence extended throughout the Cadian system, creating a zone of relative warp stability that allowed for reliable astropathic communication and safer warp travel. Tech priests assigned to pylon research facilities discovered that the structures operated according to principles that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between the material realm and the warp. The pylons seemed to function as reality anchors, their energy emissions creating interference patterns that disrupted the psychic resonance necessary for demon summoning and warp storm formation. This capability made them invaluable for maintaining Imperial control over the Cadian Gate, as Chaos forces found their most powerful weapons neutralized within the structure's area of effect. The technology incorporated into the pylons defied reverse engineering attempts, with their internal mechanisms existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, while drawing power from sources that Imperial science could not identify. Magos biologist Call spent decades studying pylon fragments recovered from damaged structures, his research revealing construction techniques that required manipulation of fundamental forces beyond current Imperial understanding. The implications of this technology for Imperial defensive capabilities remained largely theoretical, as attempts to replicate pylon functions using known manufacturing methods consistently failed. Archaeological evidence suggested that the pylons formed part of a galaxy-spanning network designed to contain warp-based threats, with similar structures discovered on worlds throughout the Segmentum Obscurus and beyond. The Adeptus Mechanicus maintained research stations at confirmed pylon sites, their investigations revealing that the network had been systematically damaged over millions of years by unknown forces. The destruction appeared deliberate rather than accidental, suggesting that some intelligence had actively worked to weaken the pylon's protective influence. During the 13th Black Crusade, Abaddon's forces specifically targeted the Cadian pylons for destruction, recognizing their crucial role in maintaining Imperial control over the region. The War Master's strategy involved corrupting several pylons through demonic possession while physically destroying others through concentrated bombardment, creating gaps in the network's coverage that allowed Chaos forces to establish permanent footholds in real space. The systematic nature of these attacks demonstrated sophisticated understanding of pylon technology that exceeded Imperial knowledge of the structure's capabilities. The fall of Cadia during the 13th Black Crusade resulted from the catastrophic failure of the pylon network when Abaddon succeeded in destroying enough structures to destabilize the entire system. The resulting warp storm tore the planet apart, creating a massive rift in reality that extended the Eye of Terror's influence deep into the Segmentum Obscurus. The destruction of the fortress world eliminated the primary choke point that had contained Chaos expansion for 10 millennia, forcing Imperial strategists to develop entirely new defensive concepts based on mobile fleet operations rather than static fortifications. Belize Corona emerged as another critical fortress world within the Segmentum Obscurus, its position along major warp routes making it a vital strategic asset for controlling space traffic throughout the region. The planet's surface featured extensive defensive installations built around naturally occurring mountain ranges that provided excellent defensive positions while complicating enemy assault operations. The Cornan military tradition emphasized mountain warfare and defensive operations, producing specialized regiments trained to operate in extreme terrain conditions. The Corona Mountains that dominated the planet's primary continent rose to heights exceeding those found on most Imperial worlds, their peaks shrouded in perpetual storms that made aerial operations extremely hazardous. Imperial engineers had carved extensive tunnel networks throughout these mountains, creating underground cities that could house entire armies while remaining hidden from orbital surveillance. The tunnel systems connected major defensive positions through routes that allowed rapid redeployment of forces without exposure to enemy fire. Cornan regiments specialized in defensive warfare and mountain operations, their training emphasizing marksmanship and small unit tactics suited to the challenging terrain of their homeworld. These forces proved particularly effective when deployed to other mountainous worlds throughout the Imperium, their expertise in high-altitude operations and defensive positioning making them valuable assets for garrison commanders facing similar tactical challenges. The 15th Cornan Mountain Infantry earned particular distinction during the Macharian Crusade, their mountain warfare skills proving crucial in several key engagements. The planet's industrial complexes focused on producing specialized equipment for mountain warfare, including climbing gear, cold weather clothing, and weapons designed for long-range engagements in thin atmosphere conditions. Cornan manufacturers developed improved versions of standard Imperial Guard equipment that performed better at high altitudes, their innovations later adopted by other regiments operating in similar environments throughout the galaxy. The monitoring station networks established throughout the Segmentum Obscurus represented one of the Imperium's most ambitious intelligence-gathering operations, with thousands of automated facilities maintaining constant surveillance of space routes leading from the Eye of Terror. These installations operated with minimal human crews, relying heavily on machine spirit systems and automated analysis programs to process the enormous volumes of data generated by their sensor arrays. The station's primary mission involved detecting Chaos fleet movements and providing early warning of impending invasions to Imperial defense forces. Each monitoring station incorporated multiple redundant communication systems designed to ensure that critical intelligence reached Imperial commanders even if primary channels were compromised. The stations transmitted their data through a network of relay beacons that created multiple pathways for information flow, reducing the risk that enemy action could completely sever communications between frontier installations and central command facilities. This redundancy proved essential given the unreliable nature of astropathic communication throughout the region. The automated defense systems installed at monitoring stations provided protection against small-scale raids while alerting nearby Imperial forces to more serious threats. These defenses typically included orbital mines, automated weapon platforms, and concealed missile batteries capable of engaging enemy vessels at extreme range. The defensive installations operated under strict engagement protocols designed to avoid revealing their positions to enemy reconnaissance, while still providing effective protection for the monitoring equipment they guarded. Orbital defense platforms, positioned throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, created overlapping fields of fire that could engage Chaos fleets attempting to penetrate Imperial space. These massive installations mounted weapons capable of threatening battleship-class vessels while maintaining the armor and shielding necessary to withstand return fire from enemy fleets. The platforms operated as part of integrated defense networks that coordinated their fire to maximize effectiveness against enemy formations. The Rammels-class star forts that served as mobile fortress installations provided flexible defensive capabilities that could be repositioned based on changing threat assessments. These enormous space stations mounted firepower equivalent to entire Imperial Navy battle groups while maintaining manufacturing and repair facilities that allowed them to operate independently for extended periods. The star forts' mobility made them particularly valuable for responding to chaos incursions in remote areas where fixed installations would be impractical. Ramley's stations assigned to the Segmentum Obscurus received specialized modifications designed for operations in warp-disrupted regions, including enhanced navigation systems and improved warp drive shielding. These modifications allowed the stations to maintain operational effectiveness even in areas where conventional vessels experienced significant performance degradation due to chaos influence. The station's crews received extensive training in anti-chaos warfare techniques, preparing them for the unique challenges of operating in the galaxy's most dangerous region. The early warning systems deployed throughout the Segmentum Obscurus incorporated both technological and psychic detection methods, recognizing that chaos forces often employed supernatural means to conceal their movements from conventional sensors. Astropathic monitoring stations maintained constant telepathic surveillance of local warp space, their psychic operators trained to recognize the distinctive signatures associated with different types of chaos incursions. These psychic early warning networks proved particularly effective at detecting demonic manifestations and warp storm formation. The integration of psychic and technological detection systems created comprehensive surveillance coverage that was difficult for enemy forces to evade completely. Chaos fleets might successfully conceal themselves from conventional sensors through stealth technology or warp manipulation, but their psychic signatures remained detectable to properly trained astropaths. Conversely, forces that employed psychic shielding to avoid telepathic detection typically remained visible to conventional sensor arrays, ensuring that Imperial forces received warning of approaching threats regardless of the concealment methods employed. Specialized analysis centers processed intelligence gathered by monitoring networks throughout the region, their teams of experts trained to identify patterns in chaos activity that might indicate major offensive preparations. These facilities maintained detailed databases of known chaos vessels, commanders, and tactical preferences, allowing analysts to predict enemy intentions based on observed force compositions and movement patterns. The intelligence produced by these centers proved invaluable for Imperial commanders planning defensive operations and resource allocation decisions. The Fortress World networks established throughout the Segmentum Obscurus created mutually supporting defensive positions that could coordinate their responses to major chaos incursions. Communication links between fortress installations allowed for rapid information sharing and coordinated tactical responses, while their overlapping defensive zones created multiple layers of protection for critical Imperial assets. The loss of any single fortress world, while strategically significant, did not necessarily compromise the entire defensive network's effectiveness. The strategic preparations for Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade began decades before the first Chaos vessels emerged from the Eye of Terror, representing the culmination of 10 millennia of warfare experience and tactical refinement. Unlike his previous 12 attempts to break Imperial control over the Cadian Gate, this campaign incorporated lessons learned from every previous failure while leveraging unprecedented coordination between disparate chaos factions that had never before operated in true unity. The War Master's planning encompassed not merely military conquest, but the fundamental restructuring of reality itself through the systematic destruction of the ancient pylon network that maintained stability throughout the region. Abaddon's coalition-building efforts required diplomatic skills that few outside the highest circles of chaos leadership fully appreciated, as the War Master successfully negotiated alliances between factions whose mutual hatred typically prevented any cooperation. The Iron Warriors provided siege expertise and demon engine manufacturing capabilities, their fortress worlds serving as staging areas for massive troop buildups, while their warpsmiths developed specialized equipment designed specifically for assaulting Cadian defenses. Perdurabo's sons brought mathematical precision to the campaign planning, their detailed analysis of Cadian defensive positions revealing vulnerabilities that had remained hidden for millennia. The Death Guard's contribution extended beyond their traditional biological warfare capabilities to include systematic contamination of Imperial supply lines and communication networks throughout the region. Mortarian's Plague Marines infiltrated key Imperial installations months before the main assault began, introducing dormant biological agents into water supplies and atmospheric processors, while corrupting machine spirits through demonic possession. These preparatory operations created conditions that would significantly hamper Imperial response capabilities when the main assault finally commenced. World Eater's warbands provided shock assault capabilities, while their recruitment networks throughout the Segmentum Obscurus activated sleeper cells that had remained dormant for centuries. Angron's followers specialized in eliminating Imperial command structures through targeted assassinations and terror attacks, their operations designed to create maximum disruption during the critical early phases of the campaign. The coordination required to synchronize these diverse activities across multiple sectors demonstrated the sophistication of Abaddon's strategic planning and his ability to impose discipline on traditionally fractious chaos forces. The Emperor's children contributed their expertise in psychological warfare and corruption techniques, their operations targeting Imperial morale and unit cohesion through carefully orchestrated propaganda campaigns and selective assassinations of key personnel. Slaaneshi cultists embedded within Imperial civilian populations activated during the campaign's opening phases, creating internal security crises that forced Imperial commanders to divert resources from frontline defensive operations to maintain order in rear areas. Night Lord's terror tactics proved particularly effective in disrupting Imperial logistics and communication networks, their raids on supply convoys and communication relays creating an atmosphere of paranoia that hampered coordination between Imperial defensive forces. The 8th Legion's expertise in fear-based psychological operations complemented the more direct approaches employed by other Chaos factions, creating multiple layers of pressure that overwhelmed Imperial defensive planning. Thousand Sons sorcerers provided psychic support and intelligence-gathering capabilities that proved crucial for coordinating the massive coalition's activities across such vast distances. Their divination abilities allowed Abaddon to anticipate Imperial defensive preparations, while their teleportation capabilities enabled rapid redeployment of critical resources between different operational areas. The psychic networks established by Magnus's sons created communication channels that remained functional even when conventional astropathic links failed due to warp storm interference. The Alpha Legion's infiltration capabilities provided intelligence on Imperial defensive preparations, while their sabotage operations targeted critical infrastructure throughout the Cadian system. Their agents had spent decades establishing cover identities within Imperial military and civilian organizations, creating an extensive spy network that provided real-time intelligence on Imperial troop movements and strategic planning. The 20th Legion's operations remained so deeply concealed that Imperial intelligence services never fully understood the extent of Alpha Legion penetration of their organizations. Renegade Space Marine chapters and Chaos cults throughout the region coordinated their activities with the main assault, creating multiple simultaneous threats that prevented Imperial forces from concentrating their strength against Abaddon's primary objectives. The Red Corsairs provided fleet assets and boarding specialists, their experience in void warfare proving invaluable for establishing space superiority around key target systems. Huron Blackheart's forces operated with particular effectiveness against Imperial Navy patrol squadrons, their hit-and-run tactics preventing effective reconnaissance of Chaos fleet movements. The Blackstone fortress that Abaddon had captured during his previous crusades represented the campaign's most devastating strategic asset, its ancient technology providing capabilities that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. The fortress's weapons could destroy entire fleets with single volleys, while its defensive systems rendered it virtually immune to Imperial counterattacks. More importantly, the fortress possessed the ability to manipulate gravitational fields and warp space in ways that could destabilize planetary bodies and tear holes in reality itself. The fortress's crew consisted of Chaos Space Marines, cultists, and bound demons working in unprecedented cooperation to operate systems that required both technological expertise and psychic manipulation to function properly. The ancient machine spirits that controlled the fortress's primary systems had been corrupted through millennia of chaos influence, their alien intelligence now serving Abaddon's purposes while retaining their original destructive capabilities. These corrupted spirits could interface directly with chaos sorcerers, allowing for tactical coordination that combined technological precision with demonic power. Abaddon's personal command of the fortress demonstrated his evolution from a simple warlord into a strategic genius capable of wielding weapons that could reshape the galaxy itself. The War Master had spent centuries studying the fortress's systems, learning to operate technology that predated human civilization while adapting its capabilities to serve his strategic objectives. His mastery of the fortress's weapon systems allowed him to target specific Cadian pylons with surgical precision, disrupting the network's stability without triggering immediate catastrophic failure. The siege of Cadia began with orbital bombardments that targeted specific defensive installations, while avoiding the pylon sites that Abaddon intended to capture intact. The initial assault waves focused on establishing beachheads around major population centers, while Chaos Fleet elements engaged the Imperial Navy forces defending the system. The coordination between orbital fire support and ground assault forces demonstrated the sophisticated nature of Chaos tactical doctrine under Abaddon's leadership, with multiple simultaneous operations creating maximum pressure on Imperial defensive capabilities. Kasr-Durth became the focal point of the most intense fighting during the siege's opening phases, its massive walls and underground bunker networks providing Imperial defenders with advantages that partially offset Chaos' numerical superiority. The fortress's defensive systems had been designed to withstand exactly this type of assault, with overlapping fields of fire and redundant command structures that maintained effectiveness even after suffering significant casualties. Cadian shock troops manning the fortress's defenses demonstrated the tactical excellence that had made their regiment legendary throughout the Imperial Guard, their disciplined fire control and tactical flexibility allowing them to hold positions that should have been overrun within hours. The Iron Warrior siege specialists who spearheaded the assault on Kasr-Durth employed tactics refined through 10 millennia of fortress warfare, their approach combining traditional siege techniques with demon engine support and targeted sorcery. Perdurabo's sons established elaborate siege works that gradually compressed the fortress's defensive perimeter, while their artillery batteries maintained constant bombardment of key defensive positions. The mathematical precision of their operations reflected the Iron Warriors' systematic approach to warfare, with every aspect of the siege calculated to maximize effectiveness while minimizing casualties among attacking forces. Demon engines played crucial roles in the siege operations, their combination of mechanical durability and demonic intelligence allowing them to adapt to changing battlefield conditions while maintaining relentless pressure on Imperial positions. Defilers provided long-range fire support, while their close combat capabilities allowed them to exploit breaches in the fortress walls created by artillery bombardments. The machine's demonic intelligence enabled them to coordinate their attacks without requiring constant supervision from Chaos commanders, freeing human resources for other tactical priorities. The underground fighting that characterized much of the siege involved brutal close-quarters combat in tunnel networks that extended deep beneath Cadia's surface. Imperial engineers had prepared these tunnels for exactly this type of warfare, with choke points, kill zones, and collapse mechanisms designed to channel enemy forces into disadvantageous positions. Cadian defenders demonstrated exceptional skill in tunnel warfare, their knowledge of the underground networks allowing them to launch surprise attacks against chaos forces while avoiding the superior firepower that favored attackers in surface engagements. Chaos assault forces adapted to underground combat by employing specialized units trained specifically for tunnel warfare, including Khorne berserkers, whose close combat expertise proved devastating in confined spaces, and Nurgle plague marines, whose enhanced durability allowed them to advance through defensive positions that would stop normal troops. The psychological impact of fighting these corrupted space marines in darkness and confined spaces took a significant toll on Imperial morale, with many defenders succumbing to fear and despair despite their extensive training. Cassar Gallen faced simultaneous assault from Death Guard forces, whose biological warfare capabilities proved particularly effective against the fortress's sealed environmental systems. Mortarian's plague marines introduced concentrated toxins into the fortress's air supply, while their demon engine support provided the heavy firepower needed to breach the installation's outer defenses. The combination of biological and conventional warfare created conditions that overwhelmed the fortress's medical facilities, while forcing defenders to operate in full environmental protection gear that reduced their combat effectiveness. The Siege of Cassar Gallen demonstrated the evolution of Death Guard tactical doctrine since the Horus Heresy, with their operations showing sophisticated integration of biological weapons with conventional military tactics. Plague Marines coordinated their assaults to take advantage of areas where their biological agents had weakened defensive positions while avoiding zones where Imperial forces maintained effective environmental protection. This tactical flexibility reflected the enhanced intelligence that came with their demonic corruption, allowing them to adapt their methods based on real-time battlefield conditions. Cassar Myrax's defenders faced World Eater's assault forces, whose berserker charges initially seemed to represent a return to the simple brutality that had characterized chaos tactics during earlier Black Crusades. However, the World Eater's assault revealed sophisticated tactical planning that used their reputation for mindless violence to conceal carefully coordinated operations designed to exploit specific weaknesses in the fortress's defensive layout. Angron's sons demonstrated that their devotion to Khorne had enhanced rather than diminished their tactical capabilities, with their blood rage providing supernatural strength and resilience, while their enhanced senses allowed them to identify optimal assault routes through the fortress's defenses. The psychological impact of World Eater's assault tactics proved as devastating as their physical capabilities, with Imperial defenders struggling to maintain discipline when faced with enemies who seemed immune to conventional weapons and motivated by supernatural bloodlust. The sight of chain-axe-wielding berserkers advancing through defensive fire that should have stopped any normal assault created panic among Imperial forces who had trained for conventional warfare, but found their opponents operating according to different rules entirely. The final assault on the Cadian Gate involved coordinated operations across multiple fortress worlds simultaneously, creating a multi-front campaign that stretched Imperial defensive capabilities beyond their limits. Abaddon's strategy required precise timing to prevent Imperial forces from concentrating their strength against individual objectives, while maintaining sufficient pressure on each target to prevent effective mutual support. The complexity of coordinating such operations across interstellar distances, while accounting for warp travel variables, demonstrated the sophisticated nature of chaos strategic planning under the War Master's leadership. The Blackstone Fortress's role in Cadia's destruction began with systematic targeting of specific pylon sites that Abaddon's intelligence networks had identified as critical nodes in the ancient network. The fortress's weapons could deliver precise strikes that damaged pylon control systems without completely destroying the structures, creating instabilities in the network's operation that gradually accumulated over time. This approach allowed Chaos forces to maintain the element of surprise while slowly undermining the technological systems that maintained Imperial control over the region. The pylon network's failure occurred gradually rather than catastrophically, with individual structures going offline in sequence as their control systems succumbed to accumulated damage from Blackstone Fortress bombardments. Imperial tech priests monitoring the network detected the systematic nature of the failures, but lacked sufficient understanding of pylon technology to implement effective countermeasures. The Adeptus Mechanicus response focused on attempting to repair damaged pylons rather than protecting undamaged structures, a reactive approach that played directly into Abaddon's strategic planning. As the pylon network stability degraded, warp storms began manifesting throughout the Cadian system with increasing frequency and intensity. These storms disrupted Imperial communications and navigation, while providing Chaos forces with tactical advantages that offset their numerical disadvantages in several key engagements. The storm's psychic emanations also strengthened demonic manifestations throughout the system, allowing Chaos sorcerers to summon reinforcements directly onto battlefields where they were most needed. The catastrophic failure of the remaining pylons occurred when Abaddon directed the Blackstone Fortress to ram the planet's surface, the fortress's massive bulk and ancient technology creating a gravitational anomaly that destabilized Cadia's core while simultaneously destroying the last intact pylons. The resulting explosion tore the planet apart while creating a massive warp rift that extended the Eye of Terror's influence deep into the Segmentum Obscurus. The destruction of Cadia eliminated the primary choke point that had contained Chaos expansion for 10 millennia, fundamentally altering the strategic balance throughout the region. The opening of the Great Rift created a massive tear in reality that stretched across the galaxy, dividing the Imperium into two distinct regions with limited communication and coordination capabilities between them. The rift's psychic emanations disrupted astropathic communication across vast distances, while its gravitational effects created navigation hazards that made warp travel extremely dangerous throughout large areas of Imperial space. The phenomenon represented the most significant change to galactic geography since the formation of the Eye of Terror itself, with implications that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Imperial worlds throughout the Segmentum Obscurus experienced immediate effects from the Great Rift's opening, including increased demon manifestations, warp storm activity, and chaos cult uprisings. Planetary governors found themselves dealing with supernatural threats that exceeded their defensive capabilities, while communication with higher Imperial authorities became increasingly unreliable. The breakdown of central coordination forced local commanders to make strategic decisions without guidance from Terra or Sector Command, creating a decentralized response that varied significantly in effectiveness between different regions. The refugee crisis created by Cadia's destruction overwhelmed Imperial logistics and transportation capabilities throughout the region, with millions of survivors requiring evacuation and resettlement, while Imperial military forces struggled to maintain operational effectiveness. The loss of Cadia's industrial capacity eliminated a major source of military equipment and supplies for Imperial forces throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, creating shortages that would affect military operations for decades. The psychological impact of losing humanity's most famous fortress world created morale problems throughout Imperial military units, with many soldiers questioning whether any position could successfully resist chaos assault if Cadia could fall. Strategic repositioning of Imperial forces following Cadia's fall required fundamental changes to defensive doctrine throughout the region, with static fortress positions replaced by mobile fleet-based operations designed to respond rapidly to emerging threats. The Imperial Navy assumed primary responsibility for regional defense, with battle groups patrolling key systems while maintaining the flexibility to concentrate their strength against major chaos incursions. This shift from fixed fortifications to mobile defense represented a complete reversal of strategic thinking that had guided Imperial planning for millennia. The Space Marine chapters that call the Segmentum Obscurus home have evolved into some of the Imperium's most specialized and battle-hardened forces, their doctrines and traditions shaped by millennia of warfare against the chaotic forces that pour forth from the Eye of Terror. These chapters have adapted their recruitment practices, combat tactics, and fortress monasteries to meet the unique challenges posed by operating in the galaxy's most dangerous region, where conventional Imperial doctrine often proves inadequate against supernatural threats that defy logical military planning. The Imperial Fist's successor chapters maintain a particularly strong presence throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, their expertise in defensive warfare and siege operations making them invaluable assets for containing chaos expansion. The Black Templars represent the most prominent of these successors, their unique crusading fleet structure allowing them to respond rapidly to emerging threats across vast distances without being tied to specific homeworlds that might fall under siege. Marshal Helbrecht's Great Crusade operates from a massive fleet of battle barges and strike cruisers that serves as both mobile fortress and recruitment center, drawing new initiates from worlds across the Segmentum as the crusade moves between combat zones. The Black Templars' recruitment practices differ significantly from those employed by other Space Marine chapters, reflecting their nomadic nature and the diverse populations they encounter during their crusades. Rather than maintaining traditional recruitment worlds with established selection processes, the Templars identify potential neophytes during combat operations, often selecting young warriors who have demonstrated exceptional courage while fighting alongside Templar forces against chaos enemies. These battlefield recruitments create a chapter culture that values proven combat ability over theoretical potential, resulting in Space Marines who possess practical experience with chaos warfare from their earliest training. The Eternal Crusader, the Black Templars' flagship, serves as the chapter's mobile fortress monastery and houses the most sacred relics of Rogaldorn's legacy. This ancient vessel, one of the largest battle barges in Imperial service, contains extensive training facilities, weapon forges, and recruitment centers that allow the chapter to maintain its strength while operating far from Imperial supply lines. The ship's cathedral-sized halls echo with the sounds of combat training and religious observances, as newly inducted neophytes learn the chapter's traditions, while veteran battle brothers maintain their skills between engagements. Templar Crusade fleets typically consist of 3 to 5 battle barges, supported by numerous strike cruisers and escort vessels, creating mobile task forces capable of engaging major chaos incursions while maintaining the logistical independence necessary for extended operations. These fleets coordinate their movements through a complex system of astropathic communication and predetermined rendezvous points, allowing multiple crusades to converge on major threats while avoiding the concentration of forces that might invite catastrophic losses to single enemy actions. The Crimson Fists maintain their fortress monastery on Rin's world, though their reduced numbers following the devastation of their homeworld have forced them to adapt their operational doctrine to emphasize quality over quantity. Chapter Master Pedro Cantor has restructured the chapter's organization to maximize the effectiveness of their remaining battle brothers, creating specialized strike forces that combine veteran tactical squads with supporting elements drawn from other companies. These formations operate with unprecedented autonomy, allowing individual squad leaders to make strategic decisions that would normally require approval from higher command levels. The Fortress Monastery of the Crimson Fists incorporates defensive innovations developed through their experience fighting orc invasions and chaos incursions on Rin's world. The installation's walls feature modular defensive positions that can be rapidly reconfigured based on the nature of incoming threats, while underground bunker networks provide fallback positions that allow defenders to continue resistance even if surface positions are overrun. The chapter's artificers have developed specialized ammunition types optimized for fighting chaos-corrupted enemies, including blessed bolter rounds that prove particularly effective against demon-possessed opponents. Crimson Fist's recruitment practices focus on identifying candidates who demonstrate exceptional resilience and tactical intelligence, qualities that prove essential when operating with reduced numbers against numerically superior enemies. The chapter's selection trials emphasize problem-solving abilities and leadership potential over pure physical prowess, recognizing that their strategic situation requires Space Marines capable of independent operation and creative tactical thinking. Neophytes receive extensive training in small unit tactics and improvised warfare techniques, preparing them for the type of operations that characterize the chapter's current operational doctrine. The Iron Hands and their successor chapters have established a significant presence throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, their close relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus making them natural guardians for the numerous Forge worlds scattered throughout the region. Clan Rokon operates from the Fortress Monastery of Rokon on Medusa, though their operations extend across multiple systems where Forge world installations require protection from Chaos Raiders and demon incursions. The chapter's emphasis on cybernetic enhancement and technological superiority proves particularly valuable when facing enemies who employ corrupted technology and demon engines. The Iron Hands recruitment practices on Medusa reflect the harsh conditions of their homeworld, with tribal societies competing for resources while facing constant threats from the planet's unstable geology and predatory wildlife. Potential neophytes must survive trials that test their ability to integrate with mechanical systems while maintaining their human consciousness, a balance that proves crucial for Space Marines who will spend their careers working closely with Adeptus Mechanicus personnel and advanced technology. The chapter's selection process includes psychological evaluations designed to identify candidates who can resist the technological corruption that chaos forces often employ against mechanically augmented opponents. Clan Sawgal specializes in void warfare operations, their battle barge Ironheart serving as a mobile fortress that protects Mechanicus exploration fleets venturing into dangerous regions near the Eye of Terror. The clan's Space Marines receive extensive training in boarding actions and void suit operations, their cybernetic enhancements providing advantages in the zero-gravity environments where much of their combat occurs. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes the systematic destruction of enemy vessels through precisely coordinated boarding actions that target critical systems while avoiding areas where demon possession might pose risks to their own forces. The relationship between Iron Hand's successors and Forge world populations creates unique recruitment opportunities, as the chapters can select candidates from among the most technically skilled populations in Imperial space. These recruits often possess advanced knowledge of machinery and technology that accelerates their integration into chapter operations, though their selection trials must account for the risk that candidates might have been exposed to heretical technology or corrupted machine spirits. The chapters maintain close coordination with Forge world security forces, sharing intelligence about technological threats while providing combat expertise for operations requiring Space Marine capabilities. The Red Talons operate from their Fortress Monastery on Rokon, a world whose industrial complexes produce specialized equipment for Iron Hand's successor chapters throughout the region. The chapter's close ties to local Mechanicus installations allow them to field equipment that exceeds standard Astartes gear in both quality and technological sophistication, including artificer armor with enhanced environmental protection and weapons modified with rare archaeotech components. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes the systematic elimination of enemy leadership and support elements, using superior technology and precise intelligence to achieve decisive victories with minimal casualties. Red Talon's recruitment focuses on candidates who demonstrate exceptional technical aptitude combined with the psychological resilience necessary for extensive cybernetic modification. The chapter's selection trials include complex technical challenges that test candidates' ability to interface with advanced machinery while maintaining independent thought and creative problem-solving capabilities. Successful neophytes receive cybernetic enhancements that exceed those employed by most other chapters, creating Space Marines who function as living weapons platforms capable of operating the most advanced equipment in the Imperial arsenal. The Steel Confessors represent one of the most specialized chapters operating in the Segmentum Obscurus, their doctrine combining traditional Space Marine tactics with the religious fervor that characterizes the most dedicated Imperial forces. The chapter's fortress monastery on Mordian incorporates both military training facilities and extensive shrines dedicated to the Emperor's worship, creating an environment where martial prowess and religious devotion reinforce each other. Steel Confessors' battle brothers undergo religious instruction that equals their military training in intensity, creating Space Marines who view their combat operations as sacred duties rather than mere military objectives. The chapter's recruitment practices draw heavily from Mordian Iron Guard regiments, selecting candidates who have already demonstrated exceptional discipline and devotion to Imperial ideals during conventional military service. These recruits arrive with advanced tactical training and combat experience, allowing the chapter to focus their selection trials on testing religious conviction and resistance to chaos corruption. The Steel Confessors' emphasis on faith-based resistance to supernatural threats makes them particularly effective when operating against demon-heavy chaos forces that might overwhelm purely technological approaches to combat. Steel Confessors' tactical doctrine emphasizes coordinated fire support and defensive operations, reflecting their origins among disciplined Guard regiments while incorporating the enhanced capabilities that come with Space Marine training and equipment. The chapter's battle brothers specialize in creating interlocking fields of fire that maximize the effectiveness of their bolter weapons, while providing mutual support that prevents enemy forces from isolating individual squads. Their defensive positions incorporate blessed fortifications and sacred symbols that provide both physical protection and spiritual resistance against chaos corruption. The Aurora chapter maintains its fortress monastery on Oberon, a world whose strategic position along major shipping routes makes it a frequent target for Chaos Raiders seeking to disrupt Imperial logistics. The chapter's tactical doctrine emphasizes rapid response and mobile operations, with their battle companies organized into flexible strike forces capable of engaging multiple threats simultaneously. Aurora chapter battle brothers receive extensive training in void warfare and boarding actions, reflecting the reality that much of their combat occurs aboard merchant vessels and space stations threatened by chaos pirates. Aurora chapter recruitment draws from populations throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, with the chapter maintaining recruitment stations on multiple worlds rather than relying on a single source of candidates. This distributed approach allows them to select the most promising individuals from diverse backgrounds, while avoiding the vulnerabilities that might result from concentrating their recruitment efforts on worlds that could fall under enemy attack. The chapter's selection trials emphasize adaptability and quick thinking, qualities that prove essential for Space Marines, who must operate in the unpredictable environment that characterizes the region. The chapter's close cooperation with Imperial Navy forces has led to the development of specialized tactics that combine Space Marine assault capabilities with naval fire support, creating coordinated operations that prove particularly effective against Chaos fleets operating in the region. Aurora chapter strike cruisers work directly with Navy escort squadrons, their combined firepower and boarding capabilities allowing them to engage enemy forces that would overwhelm either force operating independently. The Exorcists chapter operates from their fortress monastery on Banish, where they conduct the dangerous rituals that give them their unique resistance to demonic possession. The chapter's selection and training processes involve controlled exposure to demonic entities under carefully monitored conditions, creating Space Marines who have survived possession and exorcism to emerge with enhanced resistance to chaos corruption. These procedures carry enormous risks, with many candidates dying or suffering permanent psychological damage during the trials, but successful graduates possess capabilities that prove invaluable when fighting demon-heavy chaos forces. Exorcist's tactical doctrine emphasizes close-quarters combat and anti-demon operations, with their battle brothers equipped with specialized weapons and equipment designed specifically for fighting supernatural enemies. The chapter maintains extensive libraries of demonic lore and anti-chaos techniques, their knowledge accumulated through centuries of specialized warfare against the Imperium's most dangerous supernatural enemies. This expertise makes them valuable advisors for other Imperial forces operating in the region, though their methods remain controversial even among other Space Marine chapters. The recruitment practices employed by chapters native to the Segmentum Obscurus reflect the unique challenges of operating in a region where chaos corruption represents a constant threat to Imperial populations. Many chapters have developed enhanced screening procedures that test candidates' resistance to supernatural influence while maintaining the physical and mental standards required for Space Marine service. These trials often incorporate elements drawn from inquisitorial anti-corruption protocols, creating selection processes that identify individuals with natural resistance to chaos taint. Training regimens throughout the region emphasize practical experience with chaos enemies over theoretical knowledge, reflecting the reality that newly inducted battle brothers will face supernatural threats from their earliest combat deployments. Chapter training facilities include specialized chambers where neophytes can safely experience controlled exposure to chaos corruption, building resistance while learning to recognize the subtle signs that precede major manifestations. These training methods produce Space Marines who can operate effectively in environments where conventional Imperial doctrine provides inadequate guidance. The fortress monasteries constructed by chapters in the Segmentum Obscurus incorporate defensive features specifically designed to resist chaos assault, including blessed fortifications, psychic shielding, and specialized weapon systems optimized for fighting demon-possessed enemies. These installations often feature multiple redundant command centers and communication systems, recognizing that chaos forces frequently employ supernatural means to disrupt conventional military coordination. The monasteries serve as both military bases and centers of learning, where Space Marines study the ever-evolving tactics employed by their chaos enemies. Chapter armories throughout the region maintain stocks of specialized ammunition and equipment designed for anti-chaos operations, including blessed weapons, sanctified armor, and protective gear that provides enhanced resistance to corruption. These resources require constant maintenance and replacement due to the corrosive effects of operating in warp-tainted environments, creating logistical challenges that force chapters to maintain closer ties with Forge worlds and Mechanicus installations than might be necessary in other regions of Imperial space. The Forge worlds scattered throughout the Segmentum Obscurus represent some of the most heavily defended and technologically sophisticated installations in Imperial space. They're massive industrial complexes producing the weapons, vehicles, and equipment that sustain Imperial military operations throughout the galaxy's most dangerous region. These worlds operate under constant threat from chaos forces seeking to capture their manufacturing capabilities or corrupt their machine spirits, creating a perpetual state of siege that has shaped every aspect of their organization and defensive doctrine. The Adeptus Mechanicus installations throughout the Segmentum have evolved unique protocols and technologies specifically designed to counter the supernatural threats that conventional Forge world security measures cannot address. Lucius stands as the premier Forge world within the Segmentum Obscurus, its massive industrial complexes stretching across entire continents, while its orbital installations create a defensive network that rivals the most heavily fortified Imperial Navy bases. The planet's surface presents a landscape of towering manufactorums and refinery complexes, connected by transport networks that move raw materials and finished products through carefully secured channels designed to prevent sabotage or corruption. The Forge world's strategic importance stems not only from its enormous production capacity, but also from its role as a research center where the Mechanicus develops new technologies for combating chaos corruption and demon engines. The Fabricator General of Lucius maintains direct communication links with Mars while coordinating production schedules, that supply Imperial forces throughout the Segmentum with specialized equipment designed for anti-chaos operations. The Forge World's manufactorums produce blessed ammunition, sanctified weapons, and protective gear that provides enhanced resistance to corruption. Their production processes incorporating ritual purification procedures that ensure every item leaving the factories carries the Omnissiah's protection. These manufacturing protocols require significantly more time and resources than standard production methods, but the resulting equipment proves essential for Imperial forces operating in warp-tainted environments. Lucius Prime houses the most advanced research facilities on the Forge world, their laboratories dedicated to analyzing captured chaos technology while developing countermeasures against demon engines and corrupted machine spirits. Tech priests assigned to these facilities undergo extensive psychological conditioning and receive cybernetic modifications designed to enhance their resistance to chaos corruption, recognizing that exposure to heretical technology poses significant risks even under controlled laboratory conditions. The research conducted at these installations has produced breakthrough technologies, including improved machine spirit binding techniques and enhanced servo skull designs that remain functional even in areas of high warp activity. The Forge World's defensive installations incorporate multiple layers of protection, ranging from conventional void shields and weapon batteries to specialized systems designed specifically for repelling demon incursions. Aegis defense lines surround critical installations, their blessed adamantine barriers inscribed with protective canticles that provide both physical protection and spiritual resistance against supernatural attacks. These fortifications require constant maintenance by tech priests trained in both engineering and theological principles, as the protective inscriptions must be renewed regularly to maintain their effectiveness against chaos corruption. Machine spirit sanctuaries throughout Lucius provide secure environments where the most critical cogitator systems can operate without risk of demonic possession, their chambers lined with psychically inert materials and protected by powerful blessing fields generated by ancient archaeotech devices. These sanctuaries house the master control systems that coordinate the Forge World's industrial operations, their machine spirits carefully tended by senior tech priests who monitor for any signs of corruption or unauthorized access attempts. The sanctuaries operate under strict security protocols that limit access to verified personnel while maintaining constant surveillance for signs of chaos infiltration. The Titan Legion Legio Graphonicus maintains its primary base of operations on Lucius, their god machines housed within massive cathedral hangars that serve simultaneously as maintenance facilities and places of worship. The War Griffins have adapted their operational doctrine to emphasize rapid response to demon engine threats, their Titans equipped with specialized weapon systems designed for engaging corrupted war machines that possess capabilities exceeding those of conventional enemy vehicles. The Legion's Princeps receive enhanced mental conditioning that provides resistance to the psychic attacks commonly employed by Chaos Titan crews, while their Titan's machine spirits undergo regular purification rituals to prevent corruption. Legio Graphonicus maintains a fleet of transport vessels specifically designed for rapid deployment of Titan forces to threatened locations throughout the Segmentum, their ships equipped with specialized loading systems that can deploy god machines directly onto planetary surfaces without requiring established landing facilities. This capability proves essential when responding to chaos incursions on worlds where conventional infrastructure has been destroyed or corrupted, allowing the Legion to provide immediate heavy fire support for Imperial forces facing overwhelming odds. The Legion's most experienced Princeps pilot Warlord-class Titans, equipped with plasma annihilator weapons that prove particularly effective against demon engines, their superheated energy blasts capable of disrupting the demonic essence that animates corrupted war machines. These weapons require enormous amounts of power and generate dangerous levels of heat, but their effectiveness against supernatural enemies makes them invaluable assets for operations where conventional anti-armor weapons prove inadequate. The princeps who operate these weapons undergo extensive training in demon recognition and targeting protocols, learning to identify the weak points in demon engine construction that conventional sensors might miss. Reaver-class Titans from Legio Graphonicus specialize in rapid strikes against chaos positions, their speed and maneuverability allowing them to engage enemy forces before demon engines can coordinate effective responses. These god machines carry weapons loadouts optimized for destroying multiple smaller targets rather than engaging in prolonged duels with enemy Titans, reflecting tactical doctrine that emphasizes disrupting chaos operations rather than seeking decisive single combat. The Reaver crews receive training in hit and run tactics that maximize their mobility advantages, while avoiding the sustained engagements where demon engines' supernatural capabilities might prove decisive. Warhound-class Titans operate as reconnaissance and rapid response units, their advanced sensor systems capable of detecting demon engine signatures at extreme range, while their speed allows them to engage or withdraw based on tactical requirements. These scouts provide early warning of Chaos Titan movements while coordinating with other Imperial forces to establish targeting priorities for heavier god machines. The Warhound crews specialize in gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities and weaknesses, their reports forming the basis for tactical planning when larger Titan formations engage Chaos forces. The battles between Legio Graphonicus and Chaos Titan legions represent some of the most devastating conflicts in the Segmentum, with individual engagements capable of reshaping planetary geography while determining the fate of entire systems. The corrupted god machines fielded by Chaos forces possess capabilities that exceed their original specifications, their demon-possessed machine spirits providing enhanced reflexes and tactical awareness, while their weapons systems benefit from demonic enhancement that increases their destructive potential. These advantages force Imperial Titan crews to rely on superior training and coordination to overcome enemies who possess supernatural capabilities. The Legio Mortis represents the primary Chaos Titan threat throughout the region, their death's heads having embraced corruption during the Horus Heresy, while retaining the tactical expertise that made them one of the most effective Titan legions during the Great Crusade. The corrupted princeps who pilot these god machines have fused with their machines' demon-possessed spirits, creating hybrid entities that combine human tactical intelligence with demonic power and malevolence. These abominations can coordinate their attacks through psychic communion, while adapting their tactics based on real-time battlefield conditions that conventional machine spirits might not recognize. Morty's Titans demonstrate capabilities that defy the normal limitations of their chassis designs, with Warlord-class engines moving with the speed of Reavers, while Reaver-class machines generate firepower that rivals their larger counterparts. These enhancements come at the cost of stability and reliability, as the demon spirits that provide these capabilities sometimes act according to their own desires rather than tactical requirements. Imperial Titan crews learn to exploit these moments of unpredictability, timing their attacks to coincide with periods when Chaos God machines might be distracted by their internal conflicts. The weapons employed by Chaos Titans incorporate demonic essence into their construction, creating hybrid systems that combine technological precision with supernatural malevolence. Plasma cannons fire shots infused with warp energy that can corrupt the machine spirits of enemy Titans, while missile systems launch warheads that explode into clouds of demonic essence capable of possessing nearby machinery. These weapons prove particularly dangerous to Imperial God machines, as successful hits can initiate corruption processes that might compromise entire Titan crews if not immediately countered through purification protocols. Forge World Metallica maintains significant industrial installations throughout the Segmentum, their specialization in producing heavy weapons and vehicle components, making them crucial suppliers for Imperial forces operating in the region. The Forge World's tech priests have developed enhanced manufacturing techniques that incorporate anti-corruption measures into their production processes, ensuring that weapons and equipment produced at their facilities remain resistant to chaos influence even when deployed in heavily tainted environments. Metallika's products include specialized ammunition types designed for fighting demon engines. They're blessed projectiles capable of disrupting the demonic bindings that animate corrupted war machines. The Forge World's research facilities focus on developing improved machine spirit binding techniques that provide enhanced resistance to demonic possession, their work building on knowledge accumulated through centuries of combat against chaos forces. Metallika tech priests have pioneered the use of psychically inert materials in critical system components, creating cogitators and control systems that remain functional even when exposed to high levels of warp energy. These innovations have proven essential for maintaining Imperial technological superiority in environments where conventional equipment might fail due to supernatural interference. Explorator fleets launched from Forge worlds throughout the Segmentum undertake some of the most dangerous missions in Imperial space. Their expeditions into the Eye of Terror, seeking to recover ancient technology, while studying the corruption processes that transform Imperial equipment into demon engines. These fleets consist of heavily armed and shielded vessels crewed by tech priests who have undergone extensive conditioning to resist chaos corruption. Their ships equipped with specialized sensors and containment systems designed for safely analyzing heretical technology. The knowledge gained from these expeditions proves invaluable for developing countermeasures against chaos technological threats, though the casualty rates among Explorator crews remain extremely high. Mago's Explorator Belisarius Call's expeditions into the Eye of Terror have recovered numerous STC fragments and archaeotech devices that have enhanced Imperial technological capabilities throughout the region, though the process of analyzing and implementing these discoveries requires extreme caution to prevent corruption of Imperial systems. Call's teams employ specialized protocols that isolate recovered technology in psychically shielded containment systems, while conducting analysis through remote manipulation systems that prevent direct contact between tech priests and potentially corrupted artifacts. These procedures significantly slow the research process, but provide essential protection against the corruption that has claimed numerous previous expeditions. The archaeotech recovered from these dangerous missions includes weapon designs that predate the Age of Strife, their construction incorporating principles that provide inherent resistance to chaos corruption, while delivering enhanced performance against demon engines and corrupted war machines. Implementation of these designs requires careful adaptation to current Imperial manufacturing capabilities, as the original construction techniques often depend on technologies that no longer exist or materials that cannot be safely obtained. The resulting hybrid designs combine ancient effectiveness with modern safety protocols, creating weapons that prove particularly valuable for forces operating in warp-tainted environments. Scrap code represents one of the most insidious threats faced by Forge worlds throughout the Segmentum. Its viral programs capable of corrupting machine spirits while spreading through cogitator networks at speeds that conventional security measures cannot contain. This demonic malware typically infiltrates Forge world systems through captured Imperial equipment that has been exposed to chaos corruption, its presence remaining undetected until it has established itself throughout critical infrastructure systems. Once active, scrap code can transform loyal machine spirits into malevolent entities that serve chaos interests while maintaining their original functions well enough to avoid immediate detection. Counter-scrap code protocols developed by Mechanicus security specialists emphasize rapid isolation and purification of infected systems, their procedures requiring the physical disconnection of compromised equipment from all network connections, while specialized purification rituals cleanse corrupted machine spirits. These protocols prove effective when implemented quickly, but scrap code infections that remain undetected for extended periods can establish themselves so thoroughly that complete system replacement becomes the only viable solution. The economic and strategic costs of such replacements create significant vulnerabilities that chaos forces actively exploit through targeted scrap code attacks. Binary cant modifications, developed specifically for anti-scrap code operations, allow tech priests to communicate critical information through channels that corrupted machine spirits cannot easily monitor or intercept. Their specialized linguistic protocols incorporating theological elements that provide spiritual protection against demonic influence. These communication methods prove essential during scrapcode incidents, as conventional Vox and data link systems may be compromised by the infection, while astropathic communication remains vulnerable to warp-based interference from the same demonic entities responsible for the scrapcode. Demon engines encountered throughout the Segmentum demonstrate increasingly sophisticated designs that suggest ongoing development and refinement of Chaos technological capabilities, their construction incorporating lessons learned from previous engagements with Imperial forces while adapting to counter specific defensive measures. These corrupted war machines typically begin as captured Imperial vehicles that undergo systematic corruption through exposure to demonic essence, their machine spirits gradually replaced by bound demon entities that enhance their capabilities while fundamentally altering their operational parameters. The transformation process that creates demon engines involves careful coordination between chaos sorcerers and corrupted tech priests, their combined expertise required to successfully bind demonic entities into mechanical systems without causing catastrophic failures that would destroy the host vehicles. This process typically requires months of ritual preparation and gradual corruption, during which the target vehicles remain operational while their machine spirits slowly succumb to demonic influence. The resulting demon engines retain their original tactical capabilities while gaining supernatural enhancements that make them significantly more dangerous than their uncorrupted counterparts. Defilers represent the most commonly encountered demon engines throughout the region, their hybrid walker tank design providing both mobility and firepower, while their demonic intelligence allows them to coordinate attacks with other chaos forces in ways that purely mechanical systems cannot achieve. These machines demonstrate tactical flexibility that exceeds their original programming, adapting their behavior based on battlefield conditions while learning from previous engagements to improve their effectiveness against Imperial defensive measures. The demon spirits that animate defilers retain memories of their previous battles, creating a collective intelligence that makes each encounter more dangerous than the last. Forgifiends and Maulerfiends operate as specialized demon engines designed for specific tactical roles, their construction optimized for either long-range fire support or close-quarters demolition work respectively. These machines demonstrate the sophisticated nature of chaos engineering capabilities, their designs incorporating features that would be impossible to achieve through purely technological means, while maintaining the reliability necessary for sustained combat operations. The demon spirits bound into these engines provide enhanced sensory capabilities and reaction speeds that allow them to engage Imperial forces on more than equal terms despite their mechanical origins. The Adeptus Mechanicus response to demon engine threats involves specialized Skitarii formations trained specifically for anti-demon operations, their equipment and tactics designed to exploit the weaknesses inherent in corrupted war machines, while avoiding the supernatural capabilities that make these enemies so dangerous. Skitarii Rangers equipped with blessed ammunition and sanctified weapons can engage demon engines at ranges where their supernatural abilities prove less effective, while Vanguard formations use their enhanced mobility to attack demon engines from unexpected angles that their demonic intelligence might not anticipate. Tech Dominus leaders coordinate these anti-demon operations through specialized command protocols that incorporate both tactical intelligence and theological knowledge, their understanding of demon behavior allowing them to predict enemy movements, while their technical expertise identifies vulnerabilities in demon engine construction. These commanders receive extensive training in recognizing the signs of demonic corruption, while maintaining the spiritual discipline necessary to resist the psychological effects of prolonged exposure to chaos influences. The specialized Cataphren destroyers deployed by Forge Worlds throughout the Segmentum carry weapons, specifically designed for engaging demon engines at close range. Their heavy grav cannons and plasma culverins providing the firepower necessary to penetrate corrupted armor, while their cybernetic operators possess the enhanced reflexes needed to target fast-moving supernatural enemies. These heavily augmented warriors represent the Mechanicus's answer to the increasing sophistication of Chaos demon engines, their bodies extensively modified to interface directly with their weapons systems, while their minds receive conditioning that provides resistance to the fear effects commonly employed by demonic entities. The networks of chaos cults that operate throughout Imperial worlds in the Segmentum Obscurus represent one of the most insidious threats to Imperial control, their activities often remaining undetected for decades, while they gradually expand their influence within planetary governments and military organizations. These cults employ recruitment methods that exploit the desperation and fear that characterize life in the galaxy's most dangerous region, targeting individuals who have lost faith in Imperial protection or who seek power that conventional advancement cannot provide. The cult's ability to remain hidden within Imperial society stems from their sophisticated understanding of Imperial bureaucracy and their careful cultivation of contacts within key organizations. The Pilgrims of Hate operate throughout the Calixis sector, their cult structure disguised as a legitimate religious organization that provides charitable services to Imperial citizens while secretly indoctrinating new members into chaos worship. The cult's recruitment efforts focus on Imperial Guard veterans who have witnessed the horrors of chaos warfare, their traumatic experiences making them susceptible to the cult's message that only through embracing chaos can humanity hope to survive in a hostile galaxy. The Pilgrims provide medical care and financial assistance to their targets while gradually introducing them to chaos doctrine through seemingly innocent philosophical discussions and religious ceremonies. The cult's leadership consists of former Imperial officials who maintain their positions within planetary governments while secretly advancing chaos interests through administrative manipulation and resource diversion. These infiltrators use their access to Imperial records and communication systems to identify potential recruits while coordinating with other cult cells to avoid detection by Imperial security services. The Pilgrims' ability to operate openly as a charitable organization provides perfect cover for their activities, as Imperial authorities typically focus their investigations on obviously suspicious groups while overlooking organizations that appear to serve legitimate Imperial interests. The Crimson Dawn represents a more militant chaos cult that operates throughout the Gothic sector, their recruitment focusing on criminal organizations and underhive populations that already exist outside Imperial law. The cult offers protection and resources to criminal gangs in exchange for their loyalty, gradually transforming these organizations into dedicated chaos worship groups while maintaining their original criminal activities as cover for cult operations. The Crimson Dawn's military wing consists of former PDF troopers and Imperial Guard deserters who provide combat training to civilian cult members while planning terrorist attacks against Imperial installations. The cult's operations typically begin with the infiltration of existing criminal networks, their agents identifying gang leaders who might be receptive to chaos worship while eliminating those who prove resistant to recruitment. The Crimson Dawn provides advanced weapons and tactical training to allied gangs, their resources allowing previously minor criminal organizations to challenge established underhive power structures while spreading chaos influence throughout planetary populations. These gang wars serve multiple purposes for the cult, creating instability that diverts Imperial security resources while providing practical combat experience for cult members who may later participate in larger chaos operations. The Serrated Query operates as an intellectually focused chaos cult that recruits from Imperial educational institutions and research facilities, their message appealing to scholars and tech priests who have become disillusioned with Imperial doctrine or who seek knowledge that official channels cannot provide. The cult presents chaos worship as a path to greater understanding of the universe's true nature. Their recruitment materials disguised as philosophical treatises and scientific papers that gradually introduce readers to chaos concepts through seemingly academic discussions of forbidden topics. The cult's leadership includes corrupted tech priests who use their positions within the Adeptus Mechanicus to access restricted information while recruiting new members from among their colleagues and students. These infiltrators provide cult cells with technical expertise and equipment that significantly enhances their operational capabilities, while their knowledge of Imperial security protocols allows them to evade detection through sophisticated countermeasures. The Serrated Query's operations typically focus on sabotaging Imperial research projects and stealing advanced technology for chaos forces, their activities creating long-term strategic advantages for chaos factions operating throughout the region. Renegade Imperial Guard regiments throughout the Segmentum Obscurus represent a significant military threat to Imperial control. Their transformation from loyal defenders into chaos-worshipping raiders, demonstrating the corrupting influence that prolonged exposure to chaos forces can have on even the most disciplined military units. These renegade formations typically begin their fall to chaos during extended deployments against chaos enemies, their exposure to warp influence and demon activity gradually eroding their loyalty to the Emperor, while making them susceptible to chaos recruitment efforts. The 13th Penal Legion's fall to chaos occurred during a prolonged campaign against Death Guard forces on the plague world of Nurth, their exposure to biological weapons and demon influence creating conditions that made them vulnerable to Nurgle's corruption. The regiment's transformation began with individual soldiers developing resistance to the plague agents that had devastated other Imperial units, their enhanced survival rates initially appearing to be a positive development that improved the unit's combat effectiveness. However, this resistance came at the cost of gradual physical and psychological changes that slowly transformed the soldiers into willing servants of the plague god. The regiment's officers initially attempted to maintain discipline and Imperial doctrine despite the obvious changes affecting their troops, but their own exposure to corruption eventually compromised their judgment and loyalty. The final transformation occurred when the regiment's commander, Colonel Vex, experienced a vision during a particularly intense battle that convinced him that only through serving Nurgle could his soldiers hope to survive the horrors they faced. The colonel's conversion provided the psychological catalyst that completed the regiment's transformation, as his remaining loyal officers were either converted or eliminated by their corrupted subordinates. The Plague Guard, as the 13th Penal Legion now calls itself, operates throughout the Segmentum as a mobile raiding force that spreads Nurgle's gifts to Imperial worlds while recruiting new members from populations they encounter during their campaigns. The regiment's tactics emphasize biological warfare and terror attacks designed to demoralize Imperial defenders while creating conditions that favor chaos expansion. Their operations typically begin with the contamination of water supplies and food distribution networks, their biological agents creating widespread illness that weakens planetary defenses while demonstrating Nurgle's power to potential converts. The 47th Mordian Iron Guard regiment's transformation into the Iron Skull's warband occurred through a different path, their fall to chaos resulting from exposure to Khornate influence during a campaign against World Eater's forces in the Maelstrom region. The regiment's strict discipline and military traditions initially provided protection against chaos corruption, but their prolonged engagement with berserker enemies gradually exposed them to the Blood God's influence through the violence and bloodshed that characterized their combat operations. The regiment's transformation accelerated after they captured a World Eater's stronghold that contained extensive Khornate ritual sites and demon-possessed equipment, their exposure to these corrupted artifacts triggering psychological changes that made them increasingly aggressive and violent. The Mordian discipline that had previously maintained unit cohesion began to manifest as an obsession with martial perfection and combat excellence that aligned perfectly with Khornate doctrine. The regiment's officers found themselves encouraging increasingly brutal tactics, while their soldiers developed an appetite for close-quarters combat that eventually superseded their training in disciplined firepower. The Iron Skulls maintain much of their original military organization and tactical doctrine, though their operations now focus on maximizing casualties rather than achieving strategic objectives. The Warband's commanders retain their tactical expertise, while their soldiers demonstrate the enhanced physical capabilities that come with Khorne's blessings, creating a military force that combines professional competence with supernatural enhancement. Their raids throughout the Segmentum target Imperial military installations and training facilities, their operations designed to capture equipment and recruits while demonstrating their martial superiority over loyal Imperial forces. The transformation process that affects renegade Imperial Guard units typically follows predictable patterns that reflect the influence of specific chaos gods, though individual regiments may experience variations based on their original culture and the circumstances of their corruption. Units that fall to Khorne generally develop enhanced aggression and combat capabilities while losing their capacity for strategic thinking and long-term planning. Nurgle's influence typically manifests through enhanced resilience and resistance to conventional weapons, though at the cost of physical degradation and psychological changes that make affected soldiers increasingly callous toward suffering. Slaaneshi corruption tends to affect elite units and specialized formations whose members take pride in their professional excellence, the Prince of Pleasure's influence gradually transforming this pride into obsession with perfection that eventually leads to increasingly extreme behavior. Tzeentch's corruption typically affects units with high concentrations of educated personnel or those exposed to psychic phenomena, the Changer of Ways exploiting their intellectual curiosity while gradually introducing them to forbidden knowledge that undermines their loyalty to Imperial doctrine. The planetary defense forces that turn to chaos present different challenges from Renegade Guard regiments, as their intimate knowledge of local terrain and infrastructure makes them particularly dangerous opponents for Imperial forces attempting to retake corrupted worlds. PDF units typically possess extensive knowledge of civilian populations and government structures that allows them to identify potential recruits while avoiding Imperial security measures that might detect their activities. Their corruption often begins through infiltration by chaos cults that gradually convert individual soldiers and officers while maintaining the appearance of loyalty to Imperial authority. The Cadian 8th Interior Guard's transformation into the Crimson Brotherhood occurred through systematic infiltration by Alpha Legion operatives who spent years establishing themselves within the unit's command structure while gradually recruiting sympathetic personnel to their cause. The process required exceptional patience and careful coordination, as the Cadians' extensive training in anti-chaos warfare made them naturally resistant to conventional corruption techniques. The Alpha Legion's approach involved creating artificial crises that demonstrated the inadequacy of Imperial protection while positioning themselves as alternative sources of security and advancement. The Dark Mechanicum's influence throughout the Segmentum Obscurus represents one of the most sophisticated and dangerous forms of technological corruption, their HearTech innovations combining advanced Imperial technology with demonic enhancement to create weapons and equipment that exceed the capabilities of their loyal counterparts. The Dark Mechanicum's operations throughout the region focus on corrupting existing Imperial technology rather than creating entirely new systems, their approach allowing them to infiltrate Imperial installations through equipment that appears normal until activated by hidden command protocols. Scrap code viruses developed by Dark Mechanicum HearTechs demonstrate increasing sophistication in their ability to corrupt Imperial machine spirits while avoiding detection by standard security protocols. These viral programs typically remain dormant within infected systems for extended periods, their presence masked by code structures that mimic legitimate Imperial software while gradually establishing backdoor access to critical functions. When activated, These viruses can transform loyal machine spirits into malevolent entities that serve chaos interests while maintaining their original operational capabilities well enough to avoid immediate detection. The Hirtech forges that operate within the Eye of Terror produce demon engines and corrupted equipment for chaos forces throughout the galaxy, their manufacturing processes combining traditional mechanicus techniques with ritual summoning and demonic binding. These facilities typically begin as captured Imperial installations that undergo systematic corruption through exposure to warp energy and demon influence, their machine spirits gradually replaced by demonic entities that enhance their capabilities while fundamentally altering their operational parameters. Mutant populations throughout the Segmentum Obscurus serve as ready sources of recruits for Chaos armies, their physical deformities and social isolation making them natural targets for Chaos cult recruitment efforts. These populations typically develop in areas exposed to high levels of warp energy or industrial contamination, their genetic instability creating visible mutations that mark them as outcasts within Imperial society. Chaos cults exploit this social rejection by offering acceptance and purpose to mutant communities, while gradually indoctrinating them into Chaos worship through promises of power and revenge against their Imperial oppressors. Beastmen tribes scattered throughout the region's frontier worlds represent another significant source of Chaos recruits, their primitive societies proving susceptible to Chaos influence, while their natural combat abilities make them valuable additions to Chaos military forces. These subhuman populations typically live in remote areas where Imperial control remains minimal, their isolation allowing Chaos agents to operate freely while establishing the relationships necessary for long-term recruitment efforts. Beastmen war herds that join Chaos forces often retain their tribal organization and combat traditions, while adopting Chaos religious practices and accepting demon-possessed leaders who enhance their military effectiveness. The Gorgers of Vrak represent one of the largest Beastmen populations, serving Chaos forces in the region, their tribes having embraced Cornate worship after generations of warfare against Imperial colonization efforts. These savage warriors combine natural ferocity with enhanced physical capabilities granted by their patron deity, creating shock troops that prove particularly effective in close quarters combat situations, where their primitive weapons and tactics can overcome technological disadvantages through sheer brutality and supernatural enhancement. Human populations that serve as recruitment sources for Chaos forces typically come from worlds that have experienced Imperial abandonment or catastrophic events that have undermined faith in Imperial protection. These desperate communities often turn to Chaos worship as a survival mechanism, their leaders making pacts with demon entities in exchange for protection from external threats or resources needed to sustain their populations. The transformation of these communities into Chaos-worshipping societies typically occurs gradually over several generations, as Chaos influence slowly corrupts their culture and traditions while maintaining enough stability to ensure continued population growth and military recruitment. The Xenos threats that plague the Segmentum Obscurus present challenges that often prove as dangerous as the Chaos forces that dominate the region's strategic considerations. These alien races have adapted to the unique conditions created by the Eye of Terror's malevolent influence, developing tactics and technologies that exploit the warp storms and reality distortions that characterize the galactic Northwest. Their presence creates a complex multi-sided conflict where Imperial forces must simultaneously defend against Chaos incursions while containing Xenos' expansion, often finding themselves caught between enemies whose mutual hostility provides no respite for human defenders. The Orc empires that have established themselves throughout the region represent some of the most successful and enduring Xenos threats to Imperial control, their crude but effective technology proving remarkably resistant to warp-based corruption, while their natural aggression allows them to thrive in the violent conditions that prevail near the Eye of Terror. The largest of these empires, controlled by the warboss Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka, has grown to encompass dozens of star systems, where orc populations have reached critical mass levels that enable the launching of massive wars against both Imperial and Chaos targets throughout the Segmentum. Gazkul's empire operates from the heavily fortified world of Urk, a planet whose surface has been completely transformed into a massive industrial complex dedicated to producing the weapons and vehicles needed to sustain continuous warfare across multiple sectors. The world's mechboy workshops operate around the clock, their crude but functional production lines churning out thousands of vehicles, weapons, and pieces of equipment that enable orc forces to maintain their aggressive expansion despite suffering enormous casualties in their constant battles. The planet's atmosphere has become so polluted with industrial waste and weapon exhaust that only orcs can survive on its surface without protective equipment, creating a natural fortress that Imperial forces have found impossible to assault successfully. The Orc Empire's military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming numerical superiority combined with technological improvisation that allows their forces to adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions. Orc mechboys throughout the Empire have developed specialized equipment designed specifically for fighting Chaos forces, including force fields that provide protection against demon attacks and weapons that fire blessed ammunition scavenged from Imperial battlefields. These innovations demonstrate the Orcs' remarkable ability to learn from their enemies while maintaining their characteristic disregard for conventional engineering principles. Gazkul's strategic approach to warfare involves launching simultaneous wars against multiple targets, creating widespread conflicts that prevent his enemies from concentrating their forces against any single orc offensive. This multi-front strategy has proven particularly effective in the Segmentum Obscurus, where the region's communication difficulties and transportation hazards make coordinated defensive responses extremely challenging for Imperial commanders. The Warboss has demonstrated sophisticated understanding of Imperial and Chaos weaknesses, timing his attacks to exploit periods when his enemies are engaged in conflicts with each other. The Battle of Pesina IV demonstrated Gazkul's tactical evolution since his previous encounters with Imperial forces, his assault incorporating lessons learned from decades of warfare while exploiting specific vulnerabilities in the planet's defensive arrangements. The Orc forces that landed on Pesina employed combined arms tactics that coordinated infantry assaults with armored support and air cover, their operations showing discipline and planning that exceeded previous Orc performance levels. The Dark Angels forces defending the planet found themselves facing enemies who adapted their tactics in real time based on battlefield conditions, making conventional anti-Orc defensive measures less effective than historical precedent suggested. The Siege of Hive Tartarus revealed the sophistication of Orc engineering capabilities when applied to urban warfare, as Gazkul's forces demonstrated their ability to modify captured Imperial equipment while developing new weapons specifically designed for fighting in confined spaces. Orc mechboys attached to the assault forces created improvised tunneling machines that allowed their troops to bypass the Hive's outer defenses, while their workshops produced specialized ammunition that proved effective against the reinforced construction materials used in Hive city architecture. The Orcs' ability to maintain their equipment and produce new weapons during the siege showed logistical capabilities that Imperial intelligence had previously underestimated. The aftermath of Pesina IV saw Gazkul's forces withdrawing in good order despite their tactical defeat, their retreat demonstrating strategic thinking that preserved the majority of his army for future operations, while denying the Dark Angels the decisive victory they had sought. This withdrawal pattern has become characteristic of Gazkul's later campaigns, as the Warboss has learned to avoid the prolonged engagements that might result in the complete destruction of his forces, while maintaining pressure on multiple fronts that prevents his enemies from achieving strategic superiority. The Orc Empire's relationship with Chaos forces throughout the region follows patterns of opportunistic cooperation, alternating with violent conflict, as both sides recognize the tactical advantages that can be gained through temporary alliances while remaining fundamentally incompatible in their long-term objectives. Orc forces have been observed fighting alongside Chaos armies against Imperial targets, their combined operations typically focusing on overwhelming Imperial defenses through simultaneous assaults that exploit the different capabilities of each faction. However, these alliances rarely survive the completion of their immediate objectives, as the fundamental differences between Orc and Chaos motivations inevitably lead to conflicts over territory and resources. The Battle of Mordax Prime illustrated both the potential and limitations of Orc-Chaos cooperation, as Gazkul's forces coordinated their assault with Iron Warrior's siege specialists to break the planet's formidable defensive installations. The Orcs provided the numerical strength needed to overwhelm the outer perimeter defenses, while the Iron Warriors contributed the technical expertise required to breach the inner fortifications that protected the planet's primary hive cities. This cooperation proved devastatingly effective during the initial phases of the campaign, with Imperial forces unable to counter the combined threat posed by Orc numerical superiority and Chaos tactical sophistication. The alliance's collapse occurred when disagreements arose over the division of captured territory and resources, with Orc desires for immediate looting conflicting with Iron Warrior's plans for systematic exploitation of the planet's industrial facilities. The resulting conflict between the former allies proved as destructive as their original assault on Imperial forces, with both factions suffering significant casualties, while Imperial reinforcements arrived to exploit their mutual weaknesses. The Imperial counteroffensive successfully reclaimed portions of the planet, while the Orcs and Iron Warriors continued fighting each other, demonstrating the inherent instability of Xeno's Chaos alliances. Smaller Orc empires throughout the Segmentum operate according to similar principles, but lack the resources and coordination that characterize Gazkul's domain, their WAs typically focusing on single-system objectives, while maintaining less sophisticated logistical and strategic capabilities. The Scarjo Empire controls a cluster of worlds in the Calixis sector, their operations characterized by rapid strikes against lightly defended targets, followed by quick withdrawals before Imperial reinforcements can arrive. Warboss Scarjo has developed tactics that exploit the region's communication delays and transportation difficulties, his forces striking at isolated Imperial outposts while avoiding the heavily defended systems that might provide effective resistance. The Scarjo Empire's military doctrine emphasizes speed and mobility over the raw numerical superiority favored by larger Orc factions, their forces employing large numbers of fast-moving vehicles and aircraft that can overwhelm defensive positions through concentrated firepower before withdrawing to avoid prolonged engagements. This approach has proven particularly effective against Imperial Guard formations that lack the heavy equipment needed to counter high-speed armored assaults, though it proves less successful when facing Space Marine forces whose superior training and equipment can adapt to rapid tactical changes. The Empire's mechboys have specialized in producing vehicles optimized for hit-and-run operations, their designs emphasizing speed and firepower over the durability that characterizes more traditional Orc equipment. These vehicles incorporate scavenged Imperial technology alongside traditional Orc engineering, creating hybrid systems that combine the reliability of human manufacturing with the innovative improvisation that characterizes Orc mechanical work. The resulting war machines demonstrate capabilities that exceed pure Orc or Imperial designs while maintaining the crude aesthetic that Orc culture demands. The Bloodfang tribe operates throughout the Gothic sector as a nomadic force that launches raids against both Imperial and Chaos targets, their operations following migration patterns that take advantage of seasonal warp storm activity to avoid retaliation while maximizing their opportunities for profitable warfare. Warboss Bloodfang has developed an understanding of local warp phenomena that allows his forces to predict safe travel routes while his enemies struggle with navigation hazards, giving the tribe significant tactical advantages in regions where conventional forces experience transportation difficulties. The tribe's military organization reflects their nomadic lifestyle, with their entire population living aboard a massive fleet of crude but functional spacecraft that serves simultaneously as transportation, housing, and mobile fortress. This fleet includes captured and modified Imperial vessels alongside traditional Orc constructions, creating a diverse armada that can adapt to different tactical requirements while maintaining the mobility that defines the tribe's strategic approach. The Bloodfang fleet's ability to appear suddenly in systems that lack adequate defenses has made them a persistent threat throughout the sector, as Imperial forces struggle to predict their movements or concentrate sufficient strength to engage them decisively. The Eldar craftworlds that traverse the Segmentum Obscurus operate according to prophetic visions that guide their interventions in the conflicts between Imperial and Chaos forces, their actions often appearing random or contradictory to human observers who lack understanding of the complex temporal calculations that inform Eldar strategic planning. These ancient vessels follow paths through space and time that allow them to position themselves at critical moments where small actions can influence the outcomes of much larger conflicts, their interventions typically focusing on preventing specific catastrophic outcomes rather than achieving conventional military victories. Craftworld Ulthwé maintains the most active presence in the region due to its proximity to the Eye of Terror and the prophetic abilities of its Farseers, who have developed unprecedented expertise in interpreting the chaotic future streams that emanate from the Great Warp Storm. The Craftworld's military forces specialize in rapid strikes against key targets whose destruction or protection can alter the course of larger conflicts, their operations often appearing to assist one side or another in human conflicts, while actually serving longer-term Eldar interests that may not become apparent for centuries. The Ulthwé strike forces that operate throughout the region employ tactics that combine conventional Eldar military doctrine with specialized techniques developed for fighting in warp-disrupted environments, their equipment and training adapted to counter the supernatural threats that characterize warfare near the Eye of Terror. These forces include Guardians equipped with enhanced psychic protection and aspect warriors, whose specialized training includes techniques for fighting demon-possessed enemies and corrupted war machines. The Craftworld's warlocks receive additional conditioning that allows them to operate effectively in areas of high warp activity while maintaining their connection to the Craftworld's infinity circuit. The prophecies that guide Ulthwé's actions focus heavily on preventing the expansion of chaos influence beyond the Eye of Terror, their seers having identified numerous potential futures where unchecked chaos expansion leads to the complete corruption of real space throughout the galactic northwest. These visions drive the Craftworld to intervene in conflicts where chaos forces might achieve strategic breakthroughs, their actions sometimes requiring them to assist Imperial forces despite their general antipathy toward human expansion. The complex calculations involved in these interventions require the combined efforts of multiple Farseer councils working in concert to identify optimal intervention points while avoiding actions that might trigger worse outcomes. The Battle of Kasser-Haln demonstrated Ulthwé's willingness to directly support Imperial forces when chaos victory might lead to catastrophic consequences, as Eldar forces arrived at the critical moment when Cadian defenses were on the verge of collapse against a massive World Eater's assault. The Eldar intervention took the form of precisely coordinated strikes against key Chaos commanders and support elements, their actions disrupting the attack's coordination while allowing Imperial forces to reorganize their defenses. The Eldar forces withdrew immediately after achieving their objectives, leaving Imperial commanders uncertain about their motivations while significantly altering the battle's outcome. The aftermath of Kasser-Haln revealed the sophistication of Eldar strategic planning, as subsequent analysis showed that the Chaos forces' defeat at that location prevented them from capturing stockpiles of weapons and equipment that would have enabled much larger assaults against other Imperial positions. The Eldar intervention thus achieved strategic objectives that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation, demonstrating their ability to identify and act upon leverage points that human commanders might not recognize. This pattern of intervention has characterized Ulthway's operations throughout the region, with their actions often appearing minor at the time, but proving strategically significant in retrospect. Craftworld Same Hands forces operate throughout the outer reaches of the Segmentum, their Wild Rider clans specializing in hit and run attacks against targets that threaten Eldar interests while avoiding the prolonged engagements that might result in significant casualties. The Craftworld's military doctrine emphasizes speed and mobility over firepower, their forces employing large numbers of jet bikes and grav tanks that can strike rapidly before withdrawing to avoid retaliation. This approach proves particularly effective in the Segmentum's outer regions, where the vast distances between systems and limited Imperial patrol coverage create opportunities for rapid strikes against isolated targets. The Wild Riders' knowledge of hidden webway portals throughout the region allows them to move between systems without relying on conventional warp travel, giving them significant tactical advantages over enemies who must navigate through the hazardous warp conditions that characterize the area. These ancient transit routes enable same-hand forces to appear suddenly in systems where they are not expected, while avoiding the delays and risks associated with conventional interstellar travel. The Craftworld's use of these portals remains carefully controlled to prevent their discovery by human or chaos forces who might attempt to exploit them for their own purposes. The Necron Tomb worlds scattered throughout the Segmentum Obscurus represent perhaps the most enigmatic and potentially dangerous Xenos threat in the region, their awakening patterns showing clear correlations with increased warp activity and chaos incursions that suggest sophisticated monitoring and response capabilities. These ancient constructs demonstrate technology that far exceeds anything available to current galactic civilizations, their weapons and defensive systems operating according to principles that human science cannot comprehend, while their strategic intelligence suggests planning capabilities that span geological time periods. The tomb world of Thanatos has shown the most consistent awakening activity in response to chaos incursions, its Necron forces emerging from their crypts whenever major demon manifestations occur within 100 light-years of their location. The tomb's defensive systems activate automatically when warp energy levels in the surrounding region exceed predetermined thresholds, suggesting that the ancient Necrons programmed their installations to respond to the specific threat posed by chaos corruption. The tomb's location near several major warp routes makes it a critical strategic asset for containing chaos expansion, though its inhabitants show no interest in coordinating their activities with Imperial forces. The Necron forces that emerge from Thanatos demonstrate capabilities that prove particularly effective against demon-heavy chaos armies, their weapons seeming to disrupt the warp-based essence that animates demonic entities, while their own mechanical nature provides immunity to many forms of chaos corruption. Gauss weaponry proves devastatingly effective against demon-possessed enemies, the molecular disruption effect apparently interfering with the demonic bindings that hold possessed entities together. The tomb's canoptech constructs show enhanced activity during periods of high warp disturbance, their sensors apparently designed to detect and respond to specific types of supernatural phenomena. The awakening of the tomb world Mortys occurred in direct response to a major Death Guard incursion that threatened to establish a permanent plague world within the system, the Necron forces emerging from millennia of dormancy to systematically eliminate all biological life in the region. The tomb's forces demonstrated tactical doctrines specifically designed for fighting biological enemies, their weapons and equipment optimized for sterilizing entire planetary ecosystems, while their strategic planning showed clear understanding of how biological contamination spreads between worlds. The Necrons' response to the Death Guard threat proved so thorough that no trace of biological life remained in the system after their operations concluded. The Mortys Tomb's destroyer cults showed particular enthusiasm for eliminating the plague-corrupted populations that had resulted from Death Guard biological warfare, their hatred of organic life apparently intensified by exposure to the accelerated decay and mutation that characterized Nurgle's influence. These mechanical entities pursued fleeing Death Guard forces across multiple systems, their relentless advance continuing until every trace of biological contamination had been eliminated through systematic application of their molecular disintegration weapons. The thoroughness of their cleansing operations eliminated not only the immediate threat, but also any possibility that the biological agents might resurface in the future. The Tomb World ossuary demonstrates different awakening patterns that correlate with major Chaos fleet movements rather than demon manifestations, its forces emerging to engage Chaos naval assets that attempt to establish permanent bases within the system. The Tomb's defensive fleet consists of vessels whose technology exceeds anything in current Imperial or Chaos arsenals, their weapons capable of destroying entire battleships with single volleys, while their defensive systems render them effectively immune to conventional attack. These ships patrol the system's outer reaches with mechanical precision, their movements following patterns that suggest comprehensive sensor coverage of all approaches to the Tomb World. The ossuary fleet's engagement with an Iron Warrior siege fleet demonstrated Necron naval capabilities that proved particularly effective against Chaos vessels, their weapons apparently designed to disrupt the demonic enhancements that characterize corrupted Imperial ships. The battle lasted only minutes, with the Necron vessels systematically destroying Chaos ships through precise targeting of critical systems, while avoiding the prolonged engagements that Chaos forces typically prefer. The Iron Warrior's demon engines proved ineffective against Necron technology, their supernatural enhancements providing no advantage against enemies whose weapons operated according to physical principles that predated the current relationship between real space and the warp. Lesser xeno species throughout the Segmentum Obscurus have adapted to the region's chaotic conditions in various ways, some developing symbiotic relationships with Chaos forces, while others maintain fierce independence despite the pressures created by constant warfare and warp disturbance. The Atrud migrations that periodically sweep through the region demonstrate one form of adaptation, as these enigmatic creatures use their temporal manipulation abilities to avoid the worst effects of warp storms, while their accelerated aging fields provide protection against demon entities that rely on physical manifestation. The Atrud's ability to manipulate local time streams allows them to traverse regions where conventional travel would be impossible, their migrations following routes that take advantage of temporal distortions created by warp activity, while avoiding areas where Chaos forces maintain permanent installations. Their passage through Imperial systems typically results in significant infrastructure damage, as their aging fields accelerate the decay of mechanical systems and structures, though they show no interest in direct conflict with human populations. Imperial forces have learned to track Atrud migration patterns and evacuate critical installations before their arrival, treating them as natural disasters rather than military threats. The Quoral Swarmhood that operates in the Segmentum's outer reaches has developed a complex relationship with Chaos forces that involves both cooperation and conflict, depending on tactical requirements and resource availability. These insectoid aliens demonstrate collective intelligence capabilities that allow them to coordinate their activities across vast distances, while their biotechnology proves remarkably resistant to Chaos corruption. Quoral forces have been observed fighting alongside Chaos armies against Imperial targets, while simultaneously maintaining their own territorial claims against Chaos expansion. The Swarmhood's biotechnology creates living weapons and vehicles that adapt to battlefield conditions through rapid evolution, their organic systems proving capable of developing resistance to specific threats within hours of first exposure. This adaptive capability makes Quoral forces particularly dangerous opponents, as conventional tactics that prove effective in initial engagements quickly become obsolete as their enemies evolve countermeasures. The aliens' ability to rapidly adapt their biotechnology has allowed them to develop specific defenses against Imperial weapons while creating offensive capabilities optimized for fighting human forces. The formation of the Cicatrix Maledictum represents the most catastrophic change to galactic geography since the birth of the Eye of Terror itself. Its massive tear through reality fundamentally altering the strategic balance throughout the galaxy, while creating unprecedented challenges for Imperial governance and military operations. The Great Rift stretches from the Eye of Terror in the galactic northwest to the Hadex anomaly near the eastern fringe, its chaotic energies severing astropathic communication between Terra and vast regions of Imperial space, while creating navigation hazards that make warp travel extraordinarily dangerous across entire sectors. The Segmentum Obscurus bore the brunt of the Great Rift's formation, with the majority of its systems finding themselves cut off from the Astronomican's guiding light and isolated from direct communication with Terra. The Rift's psychic emanations disrupted the delicate network of astropathic relay stations that had maintained communication throughout the region for millennia, their telepathic operators either driven mad by exposure to the raw chaos energies or killed outright by the psychic backlash that accompanied the Rift's opening. Entire subsectors lost contact with higher Imperial authority within days of the catastrophe, their governors and military commanders forced to make critical decisions without guidance from the Adeptus Terra or knowledge of conditions in neighboring systems. The immediate aftermath of the Great Rift's opening saw widespread panic throughout Imperial worlds in the affected regions, as populations witnessed the sky itself tear open to reveal the swirling chaos energies that now dominated their view of the heavens. Planetary defense forces struggled to maintain order as civilian populations fled major population centers, while Imperial Guard regiments found themselves dealing with mass desertion and religious hysteria among troops who interpreted the phenomenon as evidence of the Emperor's abandonment. The breakdown of civil authority created opportunities for Chaos cults and Xenos raiders to expand their activities, with many worlds experiencing simultaneous internal uprisings and external attacks during the critical period immediately following the Rift's formation. Warp storms spawned by the Great Rift's chaotic energies made interstellar travel extremely hazardous throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, with Imperial Navy vessels reporting journey times that exceeded normal estimates by factors of 10 or more when they arrived at their destinations at all. Many ships simply vanished during warp translation, their fate unknown as the crews either succumbed to demonic attack or became lost in the temporal distortions that characterized the new warp conditions. The few vessels that successfully completed journeys through Rift-affected space often arrived with crews aged decades beyond their chronological time, or bearing reports of encounters with entities and phenomena that defied rational explanation. The isolation of Forge worlds throughout the region created immediate supply shortages that affected Imperial military operations across multiple sectors, as the complex logistics networks that had sustained Imperial forces for millennia collapsed under the strain of unreliable communication and transportation. Ammunition stocks dwindled rapidly, while replacement equipment became increasingly difficult to obtain, forcing Imperial commanders to adapt their tactical doctrines to emphasize conservation of resources and reliance on locally available materials. Many regiments found themselves reverting to primitive weapons and tactics as their advanced equipment failed without possibility of repair or replacement. Robute Guilliman's return to active duty as the Lord Commander of the Imperium occurred at the most critical moment in Imperial history since the Horus Heresy, his resurrection by Eldar intervention providing the leadership necessary to coordinate Imperial responses to the unprecedented crisis created by the Great Rift. The Primarch's immediate assessment of the strategic situation revealed the full scope of the disaster, with roughly half of the Imperium's worlds cut off from effective central control, while Chaos forces exploited the confusion to launch coordinated offensives across multiple fronts simultaneously. The Indomitus Crusade represented Guilliman's strategic response to the crisis, its massive scale and ambitious objectives reflecting both the severity of the situation and the resources that the returned Primarch could marshal through his unique authority within Imperial command structures. The Crusade's planning incorporated lessons learned from 10 millennia of Imperial military experience, while adapting to the new realities created by the Great Rift's disruption of traditional logistics and communication networks. Guilliman's strategic vision emphasized the establishment of secure corridors through rift-affected space that could restore communication and supply lines between Terra and the isolated regions of the Dark Imperium. The Primarch's coordination of the Crusade required unprecedented cooperation between Imperial organizations that had operated independently for millennia, his authority enabling direct coordination between Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guard regiments, Imperial Navy fleets, and Adeptus Mechanicus forces in ways that previous commanders could never have achieved. The Torchbearer fleets that formed the Crusade's primary striking force combined elements from all these organizations into integrated battle groups capable of operating independently, while maintaining coordination with the overall strategic plan through specialized communication protocols developed specifically for operating in rift-disrupted space. The Primaris Space Marines deployed during the Indomitus Crusade represented a revolutionary advancement in Imperial military capabilities, their enhanced physiology and equipment providing significant advantages over traditional Astartes, while their psychological conditioning included specific training for operating in the chaotic conditions that characterized the Dark Imperium. These new warriors demonstrated enhanced resistance to chaos corruption, while their improved equipment allowed them to maintain operational effectiveness in environments where conventional Imperial forces might suffer degraded performance due to warp interference. The integration of Primaris reinforcements into existing Space Marine chapters created both opportunities and challenges for Imperial military planning, as traditional chapter structures required modification to accommodate warriors whose capabilities exceeded those of their predecessors, while maintaining the tactical doctrines and cultural traditions that defined each chapter's identity. Many chapters initially resisted the integration of Primaris Marines, viewing them as potential threats to their established hierarchies and traditions, though the desperate nature of the crisis eventually forced acceptance of the enhanced warriors as essential assets for survival in the new strategic environment. The establishment of new supply lines through rift-affected space required innovative approaches to logistics and transportation that could function despite the unreliable nature of warp travel in the region. Imperial Navy logistics specialists developed convoy procedures that emphasized redundancy and flexibility over the efficiency that had characterized pre-rift operations, with multiple smaller convoys following different routes to ensure that critical supplies reached their destinations, even if individual shipments were lost to warp storms or enemy action. These new procedures required significantly more resources and coordination than traditional logistics operations, but they provided the reliability necessary for sustaining military operations in the Dark Imperium. The Nachmund Gauntlet emerged as the most critical supply corridor linking Terra with the Dark Imperium, its route through relatively stable warp space, providing a narrow but reliable path for communication and transportation between the two halves of the divided galaxy. The establishment of this corridor required massive military investments to clear Chaos forces from key systems, while establishing fortified way stations that could provide protection and resupply for convoys making the dangerous journey. The Gauntlet's strategic importance made it a constant target for Chaos attacks, requiring permanent garrison forces and regular patrol operations to maintain its security. Imperial forces assigned to protect the Nachmund Gauntlet developed specialized tactics for convoy escort and way station defense that emphasized rapid response to emerging threats while maintaining the flexibility necessary to adapt to changing enemy tactics. The unique conditions along the Gauntlet route required equipment modifications and training programs that prepared Imperial forces for operating in environments where conventional military doctrine might prove inadequate due to warp interference and supernatural threats. The communication networks established to support operations in the Dark Imperium incorporated both technological and psychic elements designed to function despite the disruption of traditional astropathic communication caused by the Great Rift's interference. Imperial engineers developed relay systems that combined conventional Vox transmission with specialized psychic amplification techniques, creating hybrid communication networks that could maintain functionality even when pure astropathic or technological systems failed. These networks required careful maintenance by specially trained personnel who understood both the technical and psychic aspects of their operation. The rise of Imperium Nihilus as a distinct entity within Imperial space reflected the practical necessity of decentralized governance in regions where direct communication with Terra remained impossible for extended periods. Local commanders and planetary governors found themselves making strategic decisions that would normally require approval from higher authorities, their isolation forcing them to develop autonomous command structures that could function without external guidance while maintaining loyalty to Imperial ideals and objectives. The challenges faced by Imperial worlds cut off from Terra's light extended beyond mere communication difficulties to include fundamental changes in the nature of reality itself within Rift-affected regions. The Great Rift's psychic emanations created localized distortions in space-time that affected everything from mechanical systems to biological processes, with Imperial populations experiencing increased mutation rates that strained medical resources while creating social tensions between normal citizens and those showing signs of physical change. Demonic activity throughout the Dark Imperium increased dramatically following the Great Rift's formation, as the weakened barriers between real space and the warp allowed supernatural entities to manifest more easily, while the chaos energies permeating the region provided them with enhanced power and persistence. Imperial forces found themselves facing demon incursions on scales previously unknown outside the Eye of Terror, with entire planetary populations sometimes succumbing to possession or corruption before Imperial reinforcements could arrive to provide assistance. The Adeptus Ministerum's response to the crisis emphasized the importance of faith as protection against the supernatural threats that now plagued the Dark Imperium, with missionary efforts intensifying throughout the region, while new prayers and rituals were developed specifically for providing spiritual protection against demon activity. The ecclesiarchy's role in maintaining imperial morale became crucial as populations struggled to maintain hope despite the apparent abandonment by the Emperor's light, their religious services providing psychological stability that proved essential for preventing widespread despair and chaos cult recruitment. The adaptation of Imperial military doctrine to the realities of operating in the Dark Imperium required fundamental changes to training programs, equipment specifications, and tactical procedures that had remained largely unchanged for millennia. Imperial Guard regiments raised in Rift-affected regions received enhanced training in anti-demon warfare, while their equipment loadouts emphasized blessed ammunition and sanctified weapons that proved more effective against supernatural enemies than conventional military hardware. The current strategic situation in the Segmentum Obscurus reflects the ongoing struggle to restore Imperial control while adapting to the permanent changes created by the Great Rift's formation. Imperial forces continue to fight on multiple fronts against chaos incursions, Xenos threats, and internal rebellions, while working to re-establish the communication and supply networks necessary for coordinated resistance. The region's future remains uncertain as Imperial commanders balance the need for aggressive action to reclaim lost territory against the practical limitations imposed by resource constraints and the unreliable nature of warp travel in Rift-affected space. The lessons learned during the early years of operating in the Dark Imperium have begun to influence Imperial doctrine throughout the galaxy, as the innovations developed for surviving in the most challenging conditions prove applicable to other theaters where traditional approaches might prove inadequate. The Segmentum Obscurus continues to serve as a testing ground for new tactics and technologies, while its defenders adapt to a reality where the certainties that once defined Imperial civilization have been replaced by constant uncertainty and the need for continuous adaptation to survive in a galaxy where the very fabric of reality has been torn asunder. The Segmentum Obscurus stands as both humanity's greatest challenge and its most crucial proving ground, where the Imperium's ability to adapt and endure faces its ultimate test. In this realm of perpetual darkness, where the light of the astronomican struggles to penetrate and chaos reigns supreme, the defenders of mankind continue their eternal vigil. Here in the galaxy's most treacherous quarter, the fate of the Imperium itself hangs in the balance, determined by the courage of those who stand guard against the darkness and the wisdom of commanders who must navigate an ever-changing strategic landscape where yesterday's certainties become tomorrow's catastrophic assumptions. The Segmentum Obscurus remains the crucible in which humanity's future will be forged, its outcome determining whether the Imperium will emerge stronger from its trials or succumb to the malevolent forces that seek its destruction.